Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel. Obtain the Devouring Power and Become the King of Gods. Chapter 41. After packing everything up, Suzanne took Sif's arm and asked the Dark Elf to drive the spaceship to the entrance of the secret passage. "Shall I take you back?" Suzanne said with some reluctance. Sif shook her head and refused with a smile. "No, I can just go back by myself." "You send me back. What if the Dark Elf drives away in the spaceship? I'm going to miss you." "Me too." Suzanne hugged Exif and kissed her hard. After a long time, they separated and Exif turned around and entered the passage. After watching Sif's back disappear from his eyes, Suzanne turned back and called the Dark Elf. While learning how to operate it, he asked him to repair the hatch of the spacecraft. After all, he seemed a little barbaric when he came in. It took 2 days for Suzanne to master the spaceship. At this time, the time for the 9 stars to unite was almost over. Suzanne's spaceship found the chaotic place in the space and drove directly in. But obviously, his luck was not that good. He did not appear directly on the Earth, and he did not know where in the 9 kingdoms he was. After the second time travel, I appeared on the Earth, but I don't know where exactly it is. I just saw a sea area below and a bridge connecting an island in the distance. Isn't this the Golden Gate Bridge? This scale made Suzanne first think of the Golden Gate Bridge, but it seemed that the Golden Gate Bridge was still in good condition. It was unclear whether it had not been destroyed by Magneto or whether it had been rebuilt. At this time, cars were passing by on the Golden Gate Bridge, and a spaceship appeared out of thin air, which almost caused chaos. The first feeling was that I was worried that aliens had invaded again. After all, the previous Battle of New York was too sensational. Not only these people, but not long after the spacecraft appeared, S.H.I.E.L.D. had already monitored it. Nick Fury had a headache looking at the images from the satellite. What he was most worried about now were aliens. Inform the Avengers to see what's going on with this big guy. The spaceship floated steadily on the sea, and the airflow caused waves on the sea surface. The elevator descended rapidly from the top of the spacecraft, the hatch below slowly opened, and the automatic stairs were set up in distinct layers. Suzanne walked out of the elevator and happened to see a Quinjet flying over in the distance. There was a person flying in front of it. It was Iron Man. I knew Iron Man would never completely destroy his suit and give up his identity as Iron Man. Seeing Iron Man flying over, Suzanne pursed his lips and smiled. "Why you?" Iron Man flew in front of Suzanne, showed his face, and asked Suzanne in surprise. "Why can't it be me?" Suzanne asked. Iron Man looked at Suzanne and then at the spacecraft. "Don't tell me this big guy is yours, it's so cool. This shouldn't be Earth's technology, can you let me study it?" Iron Man said with familiarity as he landed next to Suzanne. Suzanne rolled his eyes and said angrily, "Don't even think about it. This is my trophy. Do you want to study it? Okay, get it yourself." "Oh my God, don't be so stingy. We are acquaintances after all, right? We are friends if we know each other. I know a lot of supermodels and the like. They will definitely like you very much. I can give you a grand party. You just let me study this big guy for a little while." Tony said pleadingly. "Hey, if you want to reminisce, can you wait a moment and tell me what's going on?" The fighter jet pulled aside and Captain America came out and shouted. "This is just my trophy. It's not an alien invasion. Tell the director you can relax," Suzanne said to Captain America. "You'd better tell him in person." Captain America shrugged and still called. Suzanne caught it, and Nick Fury's voice came from inside. "Suzanne, you are making more and more noise now. First you formed a team, and now you have even brought back the alien spaceship. I have no choice but to dare to board it. I went to the Kingdom of Darkness, stayed in Asgard for a while, and killed Molesky, the leader of the Dark Elves. This spaceship has the only remaining darkness. The elves are my trophies. Besides, it's impossible," Suzanne said slowly. The amount of information was a bit overwhelming, and Nick Fury couldn't react for a while. "What's impossible? Don't you want to study this spaceship? This is impossible." "Okay." Nick Fury knew that Suzanne must have known what he wanted to say and refused to stop him before he could say it. This feeling was really depressing. "Then what are you going to do with it? It's so big. Where are you going to put it?" "Don't worry about it, Director. I will take care of it." After Suzanne finished speaking, he hung up the phone neatly. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. We still have to find a place to put it, Suzanne said to Captain America and Iron Man, then turned back and watched the elevator rise, and then the spacecraft. The huge airflow almost blew the Quinjet away. This guy. Captain America shouted depressedly. Isn't this guy good? I find that I'm starting to like him a little bit. On the contrary, Tony liked Suzanne's behavior very much. After saying something, he flew away. Enter stealth mode. After the spacecraft took off, Suzanne adjusted the spacecraft to a parallel state and then entered stealth mode. It's enough to have a popular comeback, but continuing to show off in the market may cause panic among ordinary people. Suspended the spacecraft in the air, Suzanne contacted Flickering. Not long after, Chen Haoran appeared on the spaceship with his skeleton in his hand. It has to be said that the flashing space-time transmission ability is indeed very strong, and the ship's own defense system is very advanced, but the flashing portal did not trigger the explosion at all. This is a spaceship. After arriving on the spacecraft, the three of them were surprised. Well, the Dark Elf spaceship, that one over there is the Dark Elf, and it's the only one left. It can be collected as a specimen. Suzanne pointed at the Dark Elf casually and said. The three of them looked at the Dark Elf curiously. This was the first time they had seen aliens. Not to mention their curiosity, the Dark Elf was very depressed, but he was afraid of Suzanne and did not dare to object. This spaceship can be used as a temporary base in the future. You can find your own room later and clean up yourself. After Suzanne said this, he asked Shuang, how are the things I told you about? Flickering said, I found a few suitable places, but I think they are too ordinary, not to mention that if they develop in the future, they are still a bit small. If our funds allow, we might as well build an island, which is more convenient. These are the locations I inspected before. As he spoke, Shuang took out a document. Suzanne took it and looked at it. The description was very detailed. Address, size, environment, etc. After taking a look, Suzanne found a familiar place, an abandoned factory of Stark Industries. The place was nice and spacious. The reason Suzanne knew about this place was because it would become the Avengers' new base in the future. If I tell Tony Stark, I can really get this place. However, Suzanne still rejected it, mainly because Huan's proposal made him feel good. Island. If you build an island yourself, the place will definitely be big enough, more convenient, and most importantly, it will be cool enough. It could totally become an iconic location. Is there anything suitable about the island? Suzanne asked. Twinkle shook his head. Considering distance and convenience, there is nothing suitable nearby. But now that we have spaceships, it's okay to go a little more remote. There is an island near the west coast that is good, but a little small, and it can meet temporary needs, but if it develops, I'm afraid it won't be enough. It doesn't matter. If it's not enough by then, just move a few more islands nearby. Suzanne said casually. Move the island. He said it in an understatement, and the others were dumbfounded. It's up to you to handle this matter. Get the island on the west coast first. You don't need to come forward to do this. Just go to S.H.I.E.L.D. and say that I want to use it as a base. I believe Nick Fury will agree. It'll be fine. It's time to learn how to operate this spaceship from the Dark Elves. I will be away for a few days. Suzanne said with instructions. Yes, the three of them responded. Afterwards, the three of them happily visited the spacecraft and chose their own rooms. Suzanne, on the other hand, was ready to enter the dungeon. System, if the second dungeon plane is opened, are there any requirements for the entry time of these two dungeon planes? Suzanne asked the system. After the refresh time of the dungeon plane ends, the host can enter and open the dungeon plane, and the stay time in each plane is 3 days. The system replied. Suzanne said, in other words, every 30 days, I can enter every open dungeon plane. Yes, okay, then I will open the second dungeon plane first, the plane of Green Lantern. The second system plane Suzanne chose was Green Lantern. Green Lantern is a superhero in DC Comics and a member of the Justice League. It tells the story of a group of Green Lantern Corps in the universe that maintains law and order in the universe. Each member has equipped with a magical ring. He can conjure various things or achieve any purpose at will. The protagonist Hal, Jordan was originally a test pilot, and was later summoned by the Green Lantern's ring to become a Green Lantern, responsible for surrounding siege security on Earth and in the Milky Way. The reason why Suzanne chose the Green Lantern plane was because of the Green Lantern ring. This thing is a good thing. It can be transformed into various things according to your own willpower and imagination. To put it simply, you can't do it unless you can't think of it. Of course, if it was just like this, maybe Suzanne wouldn't enter this plane so quickly. After all, there are a lot of good things, and the green light ring is not very useful for him yet, and he is not that urgent. He is for the ether particles. Molesky is dead, and Suzanne is not worried about being robbed of ether particles. As for Thanos, who doesn't know when he will appear yet, he can completely devour the ether particles slowly, but the speed of devouring them is too slow. If placed in the system space, he would have no way to swallow it. If you take it out, the ether particles will consume your own energy and affect your combat effectiveness. Therefore, he must find a container that can allow him to slowly devour it without affecting his combat effectiveness, and can even exert the power of ether particles. The green light ring is the most suitable container. Copy confirmed. Green Lantern. A sound came from the system, and Suzanne disappeared directly from the spacecraft and entered the world of Green Lantern. Aha! Light flashed, and the environment in front of Suzanne suddenly changed. Before he could see clearly where he was, the sound of loud music could be heard in his ears. The sound is deafening, and you can occasionally hear shouts and whistles. Looking around, you can see the dim environment, flashing lights, and scenes of men and women dancing to the music. It is obvious that this is a nightclub. Suzanne didn't expect that the system would teleport him directly to the nightclub, but it seemed like no one noticed his sudden appearance. System, isn't there any camp choice this time? Evil heart or something? Suzanne asked curiously without receiving any prompts. The plane chosen by the camp is random and not available in every dungeon plane. The system answered simply. That's it. Suji was a little disappointed, thinking that every new dimension had it. He only stayed in this dungeon for 3 days, and basically had no time to do anything else besides the green light ring. The system will not push itself too far into the plot, and the time point will not be too long. All Suzanne has to do now is to figure out the environment and wait. His goal is the Green Lantern ring obtained by the male protagonist Hal Jordan. This ring belongs to a Green Lantern named Aben Hur. He encountered the enemy by Alicia and was seriously injured. The spaceship crashed to the Earth. Because of the tradition of the Green Lantern ring, when the previous owner dies, the next one will be automatically selected, so Hal Jordan was chosen, and he became the new Green Lantern. So what Suzanne has to do now is to determine whether Hal Jordan has received the green light ring. Suzanne was about to leave the nightclub when he suddenly saw a person in the corner. Long brown hair, delicate facial features, very charming. The moment he saw her, Suzanne changed his mind and noticed that she was alone. Suzanne walked over with a smile. Do you mind if I sit down? Suzanne asked with a smile. Carol Felice looked up and was a little surprised that he was an Asian. There were not many Asians in Beach City, and they looked very handsome and had a very special temperament. She smiled and nodded. After Suzanne sat down, he stretched out his hand and said, My name is Suzanne, Chinese. Carol Phyllis, China is great. I've always wanted to go, but I never had the chance. China's scenery and food are second to none in the world. It would be a pity not to experience it. Suzanne said with a smile, waved to the bar and ordered a few bottles of beer. Do you mind drinking this? Certainly. Phyllis smiled and opened it, bumped into Suzanne, and then said, Are you coming to Beach City for a trip? Yes, I have always heard that this place is very beautiful, especially the beauties here. Now it seems that it is indeed well deserved. Suzanne said with a smile. It's just that I'm curious. A beautiful woman like you should have many suitors around her. Why do you come to the nightclub alone? Maybe they don't have the same vision as you. Phyllis said jokingly. Oh my God, then I can only say that they are all blind. Suzanne said exaggeratedly, making Phyllis giggle. The first feeling was good, Suzanne was very funny, and the time passed unknowingly while drinking and chatting. I didn't expect it to be so late. I have to leave. Phyllis suddenly realized that it was almost early in the morning, and was a little surprised. She didn't expect to chat for so long. She felt like it was just a while. That's such a pity, Suzanne said regretfully. This is my phone number. If you have time, you can call me. I will be your tour guide. Phyllis wrote down her number and handed it to Suzanne. Suzanne saved it on the phone and called back directly. Let's go out together, I'm ready to leave too, Suzanne said with a smile, and the two walked out of the nightclub together. Where do you live? I can drop you off, Phyllis said. Are you okay? You seem to have drank a lot just now, Suzanne asked worriedly. If you're scared, I'll leave first, Phyllis said with a smile, and then walked towards the car next to her. Suzanne pursed his lips and smiled, then followed. After getting into Felice's car, Suzanne said with a smile, I just arrived here today and haven't booked a hotel yet. Since you want to be my tour guide, why don't you help me find a hotel first? You haven't booked a hotel, and you don't have any luggage. Your way of traveling is really special. Isn't it easier this way? Suzanne said with a smile. Phyllis started the car and drove directly to a nearby hotel. On the way, the two chatted casually, and the atmosphere was very relaxed. Not long after, when they arrived at the hotel, Phyllis stopped the car and said, This hotel is not bad. Thank you for the recommendation. Do you want to come up and have a cup of coffee? Suzanne asked with a smile. Phyllis smiled and flipped her hair. Invite me to drink coffee without even opening the room. Don't you think this pace is a bit fast? Although I have a good feeling for you, but I haven't reached that point yet. I don't want to give it to someone for the first time casually. Traveler. Oh, this really surprises me. So, see you later. Suzanne didn't feel embarrassed. After saying goodbye with a smile, he turned around and got out of the car and entered the hotel. After booking a room, Suzanne used the computer in the hotel to go online to investigate the news. I have to say that the internet is indeed a good thing. He quickly found out about Hal Jordan. He seemed to have just been suspended. Suzanne turned off the computer and prepared to take a good rest. Whether he was in the fairy palace before or on the spaceship later, although they were both good, they were far less comfortable than sleeping on Simmons. Daily Planet. Just as Suzanne was about to lie down, he found the newspaper lying aside and picked it up out of curiosity. There is nothing special about Daily Planet, but there is a reporter from Daily Planet who is very special. Clark Kent. If you are not familiar with this name, he has another name that is definitely a household name. That's Superman. This superhero from Krypton, the giant of the Justice League, probably no one has heard of his name. After seeing Planet Daily, Suzanne suddenly had an idea. The previous supernatural plane was just that. After all, there were no other related planes. But the dimension of Green Lantern is different. Green Lantern itself is one of the founders of the Justice League. Green Lantern, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Aquaman, Mars Stalker, Cyborg, the main members of the Justice League. System. If I erase this plane and open a new plane, a plane with the same worldview, such as the plane of The Flash, will that plane inherit the development of the Green Lantern plane? Suzanne asked curiously. In a worldview plane, everything that happens is inherited. In other words, if I get the Green Lantern ring, there will be no Green Lantern in this plane. If I enter a plane with the same worldview as Superman or the Flash in the future, there will be no Green Lantern anymore, right? Yes. This answer made Suzanne very happy. What did it mean? This means that he does not have to keep many copy planes at the same time, he only needs to keep one worldview plane. You can completely leave the dungeon after getting the green light ring, erase the dungeon, and then open the dungeon planes of the Flash, Superman, and even Green Arrow, and they will still be related to each other. The plot begins and the mission is released. Main mission. Obtain the green light ring. Side mission 1. Hero saves Beauty. Save Carol Felice and win her heart. Side mission 2. Green Lantern reveals his name. Let the world know the existence of Green Lantern. Suzanne suddenly received a task released by the system. He was stunned for a moment and said, why isn't this mission released as soon as it comes in? Could it be that it won't be released until the plot begins? And why is there a side mission this time? Yes, because the system level has been improved, side tasks have been added. This is good. At least you can get more energy to upgrade. However, branch 2 is just that. What the hell is branch 1? Do you need to be a hero to save a beauty and gain peace of mind? Picking up girls is a mission. Although Suzanne did have a good impression of Phyllis and knew that she was the heroine of the Green Lantern plane, so he took the initiative to strike up a conversation. It would be great if something could happen. After all, she is very beautiful. But I never expected that it would be posted as a task. What is this? Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Shaking his head, Suzanne was just about to figure out how to complete the task when he suddenly saw a bright light flash outside the window, as if something had fallen. Aben-Hur's ship. No wonder the system will suddenly release a task, and the plot will officially begin now. Opening the window, Suzanne's body suddenly turned into flames and flew directly towards the place where the spacecraft landed. In the dark night, the fire flashed by, and a moment later, Suzanne landed, the flames on his body disappeared, and he looked at the transparent spacecraft that fell not far away. An alien with purple skin, a bald head, and a Green Lantern suit is sitting in the spaceship. He looks dying. He has a Green Lantern ring on his finger. He is none other than Green Lantern Aben-Hur. It won't be long before the green light ring will automatically find the next person who meets its conditions, which is Hal Jordan. Suzanne walked over quickly, took Aben-Hur out of the spacecraft and placed it on the ground. The dying Aben-Hur looked at Suzanne, as if he wanted to speak. At this time, the green light ring suddenly glowed, and a ball of green light enveloped Suzanne. Suzanne was shocked, thinking that Aben-Hur was going to attack him, but he soon discovered that the green energy was very stable and did not seem to be malicious. Could it be? Suzanne was a little surprised. Hal Jordan was brought here directly by this Green Lantern energy and was selected to become the next Green Lantern. Now, this ball of energy appears in his body. Could it be that the green light ring has chosen him? He remembers that the basic requirement to become a Green Lantern is to be fearless. To be honest, he is very consistent with this. Although he knows that there will be many strong enemies in the future, and maybe he is not an opponent yet, but he is confident that in time, he will become stronger. Because he firmly believes in this, he has never been afraid. May I have your name? Abinksu looked at Suzanne and asked. Suzanne, my name is Suzanne. Suzanne, I am Abinksu, the guardian of Sector 2814. Abinksu said, raised his hand and opened his palm. Inside was a green light ring. This ring has chosen you, take it. Put the ring in the green light, put it on, and say the oath. Abinksu looked at the green light on the spaceship, grabbed Suzanne's hand and held the ring. After giving it to him, his head tilted slightly and he lost his breath. Looking at the green light ring in his hand, Suzanne was still in a daze. He was originally thinking about how to get the green light ring from Hal Jordan. Unexpectedly, things were completely different from what he thought. From the beginning, he chose the green light ring. I'm sorry, Hal Jordan. The Green Lantern has nothing to do with you, but it's okay this way. If you don't get it, you won't suffer from the loss. Suzanne tightened the Green Lantern ring tightly and flicked his finger towards the green light in the spaceship. The green light flew over and landed next to Suzanne. Looking at Aben-Hur's body, Suzanne sighed and released his telekinesis. Aben-Hur's wound gradually expanded and tore, and then a crystal of yellow light slowly floated out. This thing is not ordinary, it belongs to Bylisha. As long as you hold it, it will be affected. It will gradually become affected by it. Change is not a good thing. And it is this thing that attracts Bylisha to come to the earth, swallow fear, and gain energy. It is the same as the yellow lantern in the 7-color lantern group. System, does this thing have any use? If not, I will destroy it. The stay time is limited, and Suzanne doesn't want to wait until he leaves and Bylisha descends on the earth. Who will deal with him when he is gone? He. So the best way is to destroy this thing. Bylisha will not come to the earth, and naturally there will be no danger. You can devour it, gain its abilities, and generate additional energy. The system replied. The ability to swallow it. Is it fear? No, the ability to absorb fear. Suzanne thought about it and found it very feasible. The power of fear is quite terrifying. As long as someone feels fear, he can gain powerful power. This is simply a steady stream of energy. However, it may not be that easy to devour its ability, and it definitely cannot be accomplished overnight. Then put it in the system space first. Anyway, Bylisha couldn't feel it in the system space. By the way, take Aben-Hur's body in as well. Putting aside Aben-Hur's identity as a Green Lantern of the Green Lantern Corps, he is also an alien. If you have the opportunity to study it in the future, you may gain something. Speaking of which, there are so many good things in my system space now. Gravity particles, ether particles, ice box, plus this yellow crystal. Either one is a good thing, but he can't use any of them now. He can only stare. The only thing that can be used is the Immortal Palace armor. It is incomparable with the others and is not on the same level at all. The sound of the helicopter gradually came, and Suzanne took the green light ring and flew away directly from the flames. Back at the hotel, Suzanne looked at the green lantern and the light ring. There should not be much energy in the light ring now. Once activated, he would fly out of the Earth and fly to the headquarters of the Green Lantern Corps, Star Oa, and go through a similar activation process. Obtained the green light suit. Suzanne had no idea about the Green Lantern suit. Although it had a certain effect, it didn't look good to him. What's more, he himself was not weak in defense or recovery power, so there was no need to use the Green Lantern suit. What's more, his purpose in taking the lantern ring is to make it a container for ether particles, not to become a Green Lantern. System, release the ether particles. Suzanne said something, and in an instant, ether particles appeared out of thin air in front of Suzanne's eyes, and black fluid spread. The moment after they came out, they rushed directly towards Suzanne. In an instant, the particles poured in Suzanne's body. As soon as he entered, Suzanne felt it absorbing his energy. Come on, let's try and see if my guess works. Suzanne gave a soft drink and controlled the ether particles towards the light ring on his finger. At first, the ether particles were still obedient, but after getting close to the light ring, they began to resist with all their strength. No matter how much Suzanne urged and controlled, they would not get close. The ether particle is one of the Infinity Stones. Apart from the Infinity Stones, there is basically nothing it is afraid of, but the Green Lantern ring makes it unwilling to get close. This discovery made Suzanne ecstatic. The reaction of the ether particles had proved that his conjecture was very likely to come true. He tried his best, constantly urging and controlling the ether particles to approach the green light ring, and even added telekinesis. Finally, the ether particles slowly began to move towards the green light ring, although the speed was very slow. Beads of sweat appeared on Suzanne's forehead, and his face began to turn pale. The constant stimulation of his mind power made him feel extremely painful. His head felt like it was going to explode. He gritted his teeth and refused to give up. Once he gives up, the ether particles will immediately retreat, and may even absorb his own energy while he is empty and exhausted, which can easily lead to danger. Let me in. The veins on Suzanne's body popped up, and he shouted with a ferocious look. At that moment, all his mental power seemed to come out, and the ether particles seemed to be kicked hard, directly into the green light ring. Although it was only a small part, the green light ring suddenly glowed brightly at this time, as if it produced a suction force. Although the ether particles tried to escape, they failed. With Suzanne's help, they were completely sucked into it. Immediately afterwards, the green light ring suddenly emitted a dazzling light, filling the whole room with light, and Suzanne fainted immediately. He didn't know how long he had been unconscious, but Suzanne slowly woke up. He endured the pain of a splitting headache and looked at the green light ring on his hand. At this time, the ring had changed its appearance. The original green light turned into dark green, the color was very dark, and the light-shaped logo in the middle also changed somewhat, as if it was wrapped with a layer of black flowing particles, which was extremely special. Shouldn't it be called a green light ring now? An etheric light ring. Looking at the ring, Suzanne murmured to himself. Try it and see how it works. Suzanne gave a soft drink and then stared at the empty space in the hall. In an instant, a ball of dark green energy appeared and changed rapidly. After a moment, it turned into a shield, similar to Captain America's shield, and then changed again, into a stick, a pistol, a submachine gun, a cannon, and then it turned into a shield. Cars, airplanes, etc. At first, the changes were very fast, and he could only change some relatively small ones, but as Suzanne adapted and mastered it, he could change various things as he pleased. The most important thing was that Suzanne could feel that this had already happened. Not only is the energy of the green light, but also the power of the ether particles, and the ether particles do not absorb their own energy. Done. The original ability of the green light ring is still there, but with the addition of ether particles, its power has become stronger. The most important thing is that I finally don't have to worry about the influence of ether particles on myself. He tried it and found that he could still swallow the energy of ether particles, and because the green light ring contained it, his swallowing efficiency increased a lot. The energy of the green light was continuously used, but the energy did not seem to weaken much. It seemed that the green light also absorbed the energy of the ether particles, but Suzanne felt that the energy of the ether particles themselves did not decrease. This meant that the charged green light was temporarily useless. Yes, the green light ring may need it to charge, but the etheric light ring does not. Suzanne remembered that a very important ability of the green light ring is to construct a mental mask, a kind of mental protection that can block telepathy and mental control. This can be regarded as solving one of his hidden dangers, at least he no longer has to worry about this threat. What a wonderful day. Looking at the stars outside and the beautiful night, Suzanne couldn't help but sigh. Suzanne had a good sleep, and when he woke up the next day, it was already 3 o'clock in the morning, and the warm sunshine brought in the warmth. I brushed my teeth, washed up, and had breakfast at the hotel. Suzanne began to think about side tasks. The hero saves the beauty, and the green light shows his fame. The hero's rescue of the beauty was originally easy to handle, because Abenher's body was obtained by the Special Department for Research. As a result, the scientist was infected by the remaining crystals of Bailisha, and then wreaked havoc at the reception. Phyllis was in danger, and herself I can take the opportunity to save her, and even complete the green light to reveal my name. But now that the corpse and the crystal are in their own space, these two tasks have to be completed in another way. Suzanne thought for a while, took out the phone and said, "Hi, Phyllis, do you remember me? I'm Suzanne, do you have time to go shopping together?" "Okay, then I'll wait for you downstairs in the hotel." After putting down the phone, Suzanne turned around and went downstairs. After a while, Phyllis drove up. She was wearing a tight black dress and her face was lightly made up. Suzanne got into the car and said with admiration, "You are so beautiful." "Thank you." Phyllis was very happy when she heard the compliment. Her outfit was carefully chosen and dressed. "Where do you want to go?" Phyllis asked. Suzanne shook his head. "I don't know, I'll follow your arrangements today." "Okay, then I'll take you around." Phyllis smiled and took Suzanne around the landmark buildings and beautiful parks of the seaside city. While strolling and chatting, the atmosphere is getting better and better. Sitting on a bench in the park, Suzanne inadvertently stretched out his hand, and then slowly put it on Phyllis's shoulder. Phyllis looked down at his hands, then turned to look at Suzanne and said with a smile, "Isn't this method too old-fashioned?" "It doesn't matter if it's old-fashioned or not, what's important is that it's useful. At least you didn't refuse or throw away my hand, right?" Suzanne said with a smile. Phyllis smiled and said, "Actually, if I told you that I have never been in love, would you believe it? When I was young, my father trained me as the successor of the company, and I was also a test pilot. My life is basically spent in the company, at home, and on the plane." Originally, the company was researching a fighter jet, which was very likely to get an order from the Ministry of Defense, but it might have failed for some reason, and I was depressed. I went to a nightclub to drink, and unexpectedly I met you. To be honest, I doubted whether this was God's arrangement. Maybe God was telling me that it's time for me to fall in love. Maybe, yes, Suzanne responded with a smile, and then used a slight force to let Phyllis lean on his shoulders. Phyllis didn't resist, but slowly leaned over nervously. "This feels quite amazing." Feeling Suzanne's broad shoulders and his strong arms, Phyllis smiled softly. "Maybe, I should really consider this seriously. Suzanne, are you serious about me?" "Certainly," Suzanne said without hesitation. For Phyllis, it seems that she is not familiar with Suzanne, but for Suzanne, he knows Phyllis very well, and it can even be said that he knows many people. Phyllis seems to have a strong character, but after all, she was trained as a successor to the company, she is also a pilot, and she is also very independent. But in fact, she is just a little woman deep down, a little woman who will encourage you when you fail and be happy for you when you succeed. From the moment he came to the Marvel world, Suzanne never thought that he would only have one woman, especially after starting the dungeon mission. There are many outstanding and attractive women who attract Suzanne. For him, it would be a pity to give up any of them. Although I can't promise that I will always be by your side, I promise that I will take care of other things as soon as possible and spend more time with you. Phyllis responded softly. Suzanne lowered his head slightly, and Felice felt something in her heart. She slowly raised her head and closed her eyes. Romantic, tingling, it's hard to describe what it feels like. For Phyllis, this is her first experience, and it makes her understand that it is such a wonderful feeling. Boom. Just when they were immersed in romantic, a loud noise suddenly came, waking up Felice and Suzanne. Phyllis looked around in panic, and soon discovered that something seemed to have happened on the streets near the park. It seems there was a car accident, let's go over and take a look. Phyllis said to Suzanne, and then ran over. Suzanne didn't expect Felice to be so proactive, so he hurriedly followed her. When Suzanne chased after her, he found that Phyllis had been kidnapped. The group was armed with guns and was confronting the police opposite. Obviously, although there was a car accident here, the main reason was not the car accident. Is this so I can complete my mission? Suzanne couldn't help but be dumbfounded. He was not worried that something would happen to Felice. He was absolutely confident in this. Phyllis suddenly appeared and was kidnapped by these gangsters, which caught the policemen off guard. Now that they saw Suzanne suddenly appeared, they wanted to remind him to leave quickly. However, the firepower of these gangsters was too strong, and the policemen who suppressed them were not able to do anything at all. If he dared to show his head, he could only shout to remind Suzanne. Run, get out of here. Phyllis was not too panicked when she was suddenly kidnapped. When she saw Suzanne chasing after her, she didn't forget to remind Suzanne. However, the gangsters also discovered Suzanne, and one of them pointed his gun directly at him. Come here, or I'll shoot you to death. Phyllis, don't be afraid, I will save you. Suzanne smiled at Felice, comforted her, and then walked over slowly. As soon as he got close, the gangster was ready to hold him hostage. Then as soon as he stretched out his hand, a dark green light suddenly appeared on Suzanne's body, enveloping Suzanne like a halo, followed closely. Felice's body also the same light appeared, and directly sent the gangster who kidnapped her flying out of the ground. The sudden change shocked everyone. Looking at the frightened gangster, Suzanne said calmly, "You just said you wanted to shoot me to death." "I'm sorry, I'm afraid you don't have the ability." As soon as the words fell, a huge dark green fist suddenly appeared and directly hit me. The gangster hit the ground and flew out. At this time, the other gangsters reacted and opened fire crazily at Suzanne. Ta-da-da, da-da-da. The bullets hit the energy shield and spread out one after another. Suzanne waved his hand towards him. In an instant, countless green daggers appeared and stabbed all the gangsters with incomparable accuracy. Ah, ah, screams came, and the gangsters fell to the ground. Suzanne walked up to Felice and asked softly, "Are you okay?" "You, who are you?" Phyllis asked subconsciously. Suzanne looked at the gangsters on the ground, then at the shocked policeman, and said with a smile, "Of course I am still the same me you know, but I have the ability of Green Lantern, so, to a certain extent, he might as well be a Green Lantern." Green Lantern, I'll tell you this slowly later. Now, it's better to leave here first. Suzanne smiled and took Felice's waist, and then flew up with her in his arms. The dark green light was dazzling, and in the blink of an eye, the two of them had flown away. "Hey, did you hear that?" He said his name was Green Lantern. Of course, we're not deaf, so we didn't expect to be able to see the superhero Green Lantern with our own eyes. It's so cool. People nearby were talking about it. It didn't take long before Green Lantern showed up and the news of subduing the gangsters had spread throughout the streets, and there was even more discussion on the internet. System, my mission should be considered completed, right? Side missions, hero saving beauty and green light to show fame. Suzanne secretly asked the system. Yes, that's good. Although it is not perfect, and the style is not very high, it is just dealing with ordinary gangsters rather than a world-destroying crisis, but it is enough for Suzanne, as long as people know that Green Lantern exists. Anyway, I don't plan to be a Green Lantern, it's just for the mission. Suzanne carried Felice and flew to a remote beach and landed. Phyllis still looked a little shocked. "Don't be afraid, I'm still me, and I'm not an alien. It's just that I have some special abilities, and the abilities just now are because of the ring on my hand." Suzanne said softly, and put the Green Lantern ring into Green Lantern's hands. The origins were told to Phyllis. On the one hand, it was to appease Phyllis, but on the other hand, even if I didn't say it, people would know about it in the future, so I might as well tell her. I'm not scared, I'm just a little surprised. I didn't expect you to be a superhero. My first boyfriend turned out to be a superhero. This is really great, Phyllis said excitedly. There's something even better. Suzanne smiled and said, do you want to experience what it's like in space? Space, you mean? Phyllis looked at Suzanne excitedly. Before she could finish speaking, Suzanne had already released an energy shield, covering herself and Phyllis in it, and then soared into the sky. After passing through the atmosphere, she soon arrived in the boundless universe. Phyllis looked at the blue planet and the vast universe around her in disbelief, then she hugged Suzanne's waist and kissed her hard. There is a legend about the moon in China. There is a fairy named Chang'e who lives in the Guanghan Palace on the moon. Although I know that this is just a legend. There is no Guanghan Palace or Chang'e on the moon, but there is fairy. This fairy is called Phyllis. Suzanne said with a smile and flew directly towards the moon. Suzanne used energy to construct a large bed, and the two slowly lay down, surrounded by a dark green energy aura. Gorgeous. Suzanne couldn't help but sigh. Phyllis nodded repeatedly. Yes, it's so beautiful. I never thought that one day I would be on the moon. No, I mean you're so beautiful. Suzanne lowered his head and kissed her. After a long time, the two separated, and Phyllis said confusedly, this is the first time I have had such a wonderful experience. Don't you want to make this experience more wonderful and unforgettable? I may leave tomorrow, and it will take at least a month to come back, so. Suzanne did not continue, but Phyllis understood. Shyly she avoided his eyes, but did not refuse or resist. Click, click, click. Suzanne's gentle movements removed Felice's clothes bit by bit. Looking at the nervous Felice, Suzanne kissed her gently, and then leaned over, leaving Felice with an unparalleled and wonderful experience. Suzanne flew back from the moon with the tired Phyllis in his arms. At this time, night had fallen on the earth. When no one was paying attention, he flew into his hotel room through the window and landed slowly. My dear, let me down, Phyllis said softly. Suzanne slowly put her down. As soon as she landed, Phyllis groaned and almost fell down. Suzanne hurriedly supported her, looked at her frown, and said softly, idiot, I'd better hold her, take a break. Then it's not all your fault. This is my first time, but you are as savage as a cow, Phyllis said angrily with a red face. Suzanne chuckled. It's not my fault, right? If it's your fault, it's because you're too charming. What can I do? That wonderful feeling, Suzanne couldn't stop even if he wanted to. But now he is really apologetic. After all, Phyllis is not Sif, and she does not have as strong a body as Sif. So even though it was her first experience, Phyllis was far less able to bear it than Sif could. He hugged Phyllis and lay down to rest, hugging her shoulders. The smooth touch made him very addicted. The itchy Phyllis hugged Suzanne's neck, squinting her eyes and couldn't help shaking slightly. Although the night was beautiful, the woman in front of me was even more beautiful. Originally, Suzanne planned to go to Central City or Metropolis to see if he could find the Flash or Superman, or at worst, go to Star City to find Green Arrow, but Phyllis made him reluctant to leave at all. What's more, I just experienced an unparalleled and unforgettable moment on the moon, and it would be a bit inappropriate to leave without being warm for a long time. Although Suzanne still has to leave tomorrow, at least tonight, he can spend an unforgettable night. He restrained his impulse. After all, there was a long way to go, but Phyllis was more proactive than he thought. Suzanne could feel her greed, not for that kind of thing, but for being with him. The sun rose slowly, and Suzanne and Felice woke up from the sunny morning. When are you leaving? Covered with a quilt, Phyllis turned sideways and asked Suzanne. I'll have a meal with you first, and then I'll leave. I have to go back to deal with some things, and it will take a month at least before I can come back, Suzanne said softly. I'll wait for you. Phyllis nodded and said, next time you come back, will you stop leaving? Well, I will settle here. During this period, you can help me keep an eye on whether there is a suitable house, Suzanne said. Good. Hearing Suzanne say this, Phyllis instantly became happy. They want to buy a house and settle here, which solves the problem of dividing the two places. Moreover, he originally came to travel, but now he suddenly decided to settle down. This is not a small matter, and it is enough to show that he is serious about himself. The two of them stayed in the room making love for a long time, and then had dinner together in the hotel restaurant. Finally, Phyllis reluctantly left, and when she left, she kept asking Suzanne to come back soon. After seeing Felice off, Suzanne's departure time hadn't come yet, so he returned to the room and checked the news online. There were already reports on Green Lantern, and Suzanne didn't even look at it. He was looking at things about other superheroes. Superman's existence isn't that well known yet, there hasn't been an explosion in Central City, and the Flash hasn't even been born yet. As for Green Arrow, Oliver Queen is still in a state of death, or in other words, he has not yet returned from Purgatory Island and become Green Arrow. After seeing these news and analyzing them myself, I have roughly researched the timeline. He actually thought about not erasing Green Lantern's plane. Anyway, these planes are the same, and one DC plane is enough. But after thinking about it later, he still felt that he had to open a new plane, because only by opening a new plane can there be tasks, and only when there are tasks can the system be upgraded. As long as opening a new plane does not affect Phyllis, it is naturally better to open a new plane. If it really has an impact and cannot be opened, wait until the system is upgraded to allow 3 planes to exist at the same time, and then reopen the Green Lantern plane. System, can I leave early and go to the supernatural plane? Can. There was nothing left to deal with here, so Suzanne simply left early. The scenery in front of him changed, and Suzanne found that he had appeared directly from the Green Lantern's plane to the supernatural plane. Arriving at the base, Suzanne went directly to Kira. Master, you are back. Kira looked at Suzanne and said excitedly. Suzanne nodded. Well, I'll come back and see how it goes during this period. The potion is still under development, and there is no considerable progress for the time being. 8 new superpowers have been trained, and there are currently nearly $800 million in the account. As for the master you were looking for, there is already news, I have already sent someone to look for it. Kira replied obediently. Bring the 3 worst performing superpowers here. I want to devour their abilities. What the organization wants is elites. If they can't do something, then just be ordinary people. In addition, withdraw all the money or exchange it for gold bars. Suzanne said one after another. Yes, Kira responded and quickly went out to give orders. Suzanne stayed in the room to rest. To be honest, the role of this plane for Suzanne was like a cash machine to extract energy and money. Not long after, 3 superpowers came in. Suzanne didn't bother to do anything, just devoured their abilities, then changed their memories and let them go back to live a normal life. The money was not ready so quickly, and Suzanne was not in a hurry. Regarding Li Xiaolu, since the whereabouts of Li Xiaolu were known, Suzanne did not plan to come forward in person. After all, if you show up on your own, you will still be embarrassed when you see him. Let's talk about it after he is brought back. After eating something under Kira's service, the day almost passed like this. The flow of time in the 2 planes is the same. He left the Green Lantern's plane and came here almost in the afternoon. He had devouring abilities and was eating, and it was almost night before he knew it. Suzanne was going to take a bath and have a good sleep. It turned out that Kira was still in the room and had not left. You can go and rest, Suzanne said towards Kira. Kira lowered his head and said hesitantly, shall I stay and serve the master? Do you want to help me take a bath or warm my bed? Suzanne said with a dumb smile. It is true that Kira is still good. After his transformation, he only made her loyal to him. For the rest, she is still her. But now it seems that the impact is quite big, not only loyalty, but now he has put himself in the position of a slave. Not long after leaving Felice, Suzanne had no idea whether it was psychologically or physically, even though Kira had already acted like he was willing to take whatever he asked for and took the initiative to sleep with her. Suzanne admits that he is very romantic, but at least he is not a lower body animal who only thinks about that kind of thing. Go ahead, I will call you when necessary. You are mine, and sooner or later I will eat you, so you can't run away. Suzanne said with a smile. Kira Hong he responded with a face, turned around and left shyly. After taking a bath, Suzanne had a comfortable sleep. When I got up the next day, I walked around the base and learned about it. By the afternoon, Kira had already prepared all the money. There is cash and gold bars, worth 800 million. This money is enough for him to purchase the island and the preliminary design. I hope she will be here waiting for me next time I come. Li Xiaolu didn't bring it back, so Suzanne told Kira and left the copy of the superpower. After coming out of the dungeon, Suzanne appeared directly in the spaceship. Only the Dark Elf and Chen Haoran were on the spaceship. Where's Twinkle and Skeleton? Suzanne asked casually. They are in S.H.I.E.L.D. Chen Haoran briefly explained what happened in the past few days. Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D., naturally had no objection to Flicker's proposal to buy an island on the west coast. He didn't even need to pay a penny. He was able to make the decision to give the island to Suzanne, but he made a small request, that is, he hoped to study the spaceship. However, he was very smart and did not mention S.H.I.E.L.D., but wanted Tony to study it. Firstly, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s technology in this area is not necessarily better than Tony Stark's. Secondly, Tony, also known as Iron Man, is a member of the Avengers. The Avengers have a close relationship with S.H.I.E.L.D. Let Tony come forward. Not only can we obtain the data and technology of this spacecraft, but we can also reduce certain misunderstandings. It's just a cover-up. Suzanne curled his lips after hearing this. Tell Flicker that if Nick Fury doesn't agree, we will buy it ourselves without going through him. If you want to study my spaceship, there is no way. Yes, Chen Haoran responded, and the contact quickly flashed. At this time, Flicker was arguing with Nick Fury, and suddenly heard the news from Chen Haoran. Flicker stood up quickly and said, Sorry, our boss said, we will solve this matter ourselves so we won't trouble S.H.I.E.L.D. Then, he blinked and opened the portal to leave. Nick Fury was a little surprised by Flicker's sudden move. He could tell that there was probably no possibility of negotiation. Although he hated Suzanne for being stingy, he didn't want to affect the relationship between Suzanne and S.H.I.E.L.D. because of this trivial matter. Etc. Nick Fury called to stop Flicker and said, Okay, I will help with the island matter and will handle it as soon as possible. Help me bring a message to Suzanne. This time he owes me a favor. If S.H.I.E.L.D. needs him in the future he can't refuse help. I'll take the message for you. Twinkle said before leaving through the portal. Flash came back and told Suzanne what Nick Fury said. Suzanne couldn't help but curl his lips. Nick Fury is really a good old fox. He couldn't immediately change his strategy when he saw what happened to the spaceship and let himself owe a favor. You know, favors are more valuable than money. But forget it, with him coming forward, I can reduce a lot of trouble. What's more, now he still needs to leave a good impression on S.H.I.E.L.D. He is also planning to wait until Hydra takes over S.H.I.E.L.D. and S.H.I.E.L.D. collapses to poach people. Having a good reputation is naturally much more convenient. Take me to that island to see. Suzanne gave the order, and the Dark Elf controlled the spacecraft to the island on the west coast. Needless to say, this island is indeed quite large and undeveloped. The only drawback is that it is relatively remote. But for the base, this shortcoming has turned into an advantage, not to mention the convenience of a spaceship. At first, Suzanne planned to move the island closer to the city if that didn't work, but now Suzanne thinks this is it. Let the spaceship park here. There are about $800 million here, which should be enough to build and develop this island. You can deal with this matter during this period. Chen Haoran, you come with me. Suzanne took the money and gold bars when they came out. They were still piled up like a mountain on the ground. In the sunlight, the gold bars sparkled even more. The three of them were stunned to see the glitter. Especially curious, where did Suzanne put these things before? How come it was taken out of thin air? But out of curiosity, no one asked. Boss, where are you going? Do you need me to take you there? Huan asked. Suzanne shook his head and slowly raised his hand. The ether ring instantly emitted energy and enveloped Chen Haoran. Suzanne slowly flew up, followed by Chen Haoran, and the two of them turned into a ball of dark green light, disappeared into the air instantly. Crack! Suzanne slowly landed and put Chen Haoran down. As soon as he landed, Chen Haoran almost collapsed and knelt on the ground. Seeing Chen Haoran's embarrassed look, Suzanne shook his head and smiled, looking not far ahead. It was a secret laboratory, specially used to study the centipede virus, a variant of the extremis virus. Where is this? After Chen Haoran felt better, he looked forward curiously. This is a place where you can become stronger. Suzan looked at Chen Haoran. The ether particles in the ether ring suddenly flowed out, spread quickly from the palm of his hand, and covered his whole body in a moment. He was wearing a tight-fitting black flowing battlesuit, the black cloak on his shoulders swayed in the wind, and a huge figure appeared on his back. The word, war, is both eye-catching and domineering. So cool. Chen Haoran looked at the sudden appearance of the combat uniform on Suzan and couldn't help but sigh. Go back and make a few sets of uniforms according to the style that can be used as unified battle uniforms for the Alliance. Suzan himself was also very satisfied. This was made of ether particles into battle uniforms. Because of the lamp ring, there was no need to worry about the ether particles absorbing his energy, and it still works. Whether it is defense or attack, it is very powerful. The most important thing is that it is convenient. With a thought, the battle suit disappears directly, returns to the light ring, and then moves again, and quickly reappears on the body, which only takes 2 or 3 seconds. Let's go. After saying something calmly, Suzan walked towards the laboratory. Chen Haoran followed closely, curious and nervous, not knowing what could make him stronger here. As soon as I arrived at the door of the laboratory, before I could go in, a bunch of burly men with guns swarmed out of the room. Chen Haoran was a little nervous, but looked at the calm Suzan and breathed a sigh of relief. With the boss here, what should he be afraid of? The sound of high-heeled shoes clicked, and a woman in a floral skirt walked out gracefully. She looked at Suzan and gently touched her palms and said, "I didn't expect to see you here." She stared at Suzan and Chen Haoran next to her. Although she looked confident, she was actually a little nervous. She knew very well who the person in front of her was, Suzan, a person who had recently become famous. He had the ability to devour and could perfectly fuse with the extremis virus. In fact, she had always wanted to contact and even capture Suzan so that she could study out how he could fuse with it. The reason for the extremis virus is just that. Suzan was too strong and never had the chance to take action. But she didn't expect that Suzan would come to her door. And it seems like he already knows where this place is. It seems the rumors are true, he seems to have the ability to predict the future. Did you accidentally see me, or did you accidentally see Chen Haoran? If I hadn't interfered, I'm afraid Chen Haoran would have been coaxed here by you to study him, right? Lena. Suzan looked at her and calmly said. Reina smiled. Actually, I'm even more surprised by your outfit, it's very special. Thank you. Suzan smiled. We can cooperate. I know you are a consultant for S.H.I.E.L.D., but you are not from S.H.I.E.L.D. And I heard that you have started to work on your own. If we can cooperate, I believe we can have better development, no? Reina said with a smile. Suzan shook his head. There is no need to cooperate, because I have a better proposal. What proposal? Incorporate you. After Suzan finished speaking, the telepathy attack was launched instantly. In an instant, the people around him were unable to move. The guns in their hands came out one after another and were neatly put aside. Where is the extremis virus? Suzan asked the panicked Reina. Reina hesitated, but her body lifted up involuntarily, and it became difficult to breathe in an instant. I know you are a smart and capable person. In fact, I am very optimistic about you. You don't have any superpowers, but you can do things that many people can't do. So, I don't want to kill you. Suzan said calmly. Reina couldn't move and could only barely blink her eyes. Then she felt a lightness in her body, rubbed her neck and breathed heavily for a moment, and then led Suzan into the laboratory. The laboratory was a busy scene, with all kinds of machines and researchers in white coats, giving Suzan an unfamiliar feeling. Suzan is really not good at scientific research. Reina gave an order and quickly brought the extremis virus. Inject him. Suzan pointed at Chen Haoran. Chen Haoran was stunned for a moment, a little worried. If you want to become stronger, take injections. Suzan looked at him and said calmly. Chen Haoran gritted his teeth and nodded. Reina said unexpectedly, to him. Is there a problem? Suzan asked, raising his eyebrows. Reina shook her head. No, it's just that the virus is not stable and there are still certain risks. If you don't even dare to take risks, then you still want to become stronger. Suzan said calmly. All right. Suzanne said this, and Chen Haoran also agreed. What else could Reina say? The reason why she reminded him was because she didn't want Suzanne to feel that she had lied to him, and that she would be blamed for anything that happened. Soon, the desperate virus was injected into Chen Haoran's body. Chen Haoran's expression became a little ferocious and painful, and his body was shaking constantly. Reina and the scientific researchers next to her looked at him nervously, but Suzanne was the only one who was very calm. Chen Haoran's platelets are very special, so there is no danger in injecting the extremis virus. Looking around, Suzanne thought about how to incorporate them. Although these scientific researchers are not good people, and they are not very humane, they have to be said to still have a certain value. When the time comes, letting them study our potion or other things will be of great help. If we can control a stable production line, it will be of great benefit to both the main world of Marvel and other dungeon planes. Ha, ha, ha. Chen Haoran was breathing heavily, sweating profusely, but he was smiling. He could feel the powerful power contained in his body, which he had never felt before. He stood up with his legs in hand, and a large ball of flame suddenly shot out, becoming at least dozens of times stronger than before. Try it and see how it works, Suzanne said calmly. Chen Haoran nodded excitedly and suddenly waved his hand in the distance. The fireball shot out instantly and hit the wall directly. In an instant, rubble was scattered. Too strong, Chen Haoran said excitedly. It's not bad. Compared to Chen Haoran's excitement, Suzanne was very dull. You have to remember that you are only as strong as yourself. Compared with others, you are still far behind. Yes, boss. Chen Haoran felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured on him. The excitement generated by becoming stronger and the rapidly expanding confidence were extinguished in an instant. Seeing Chen Haoran calm down, Suzanne didn't remind him too much. People always tend to swell when they gain great power, and Chen Haoran is actually someone who has never seen the market. If he is not allowed to stay calm and see himself clearly, he will easily swell because of this. Why? Reina looked at Chen Haoran in disbelief. Why could he also integrate the extremis virus? Want to know? As long as you follow me, I will tell you the reason. Suzanne said calmly. This is impossible. Reina shook her head and said. Because of the clairvoyance. I know you are a subordinate of the clairvoyant. Do you think the clairvoyant knows everything and is omnipotent? This is just a scam. Suzanne said sarcastically. He is just an ordinary person, and you are also an ordinary person. But I can make you extraordinary. I do not believe. Lena still shook her head. No, you believe it, but you are just deceiving yourself. Anyway, you will always doubt it unless you see it with your own eyes. I will give you time and a chance. I hope you can make the right decision when you see the clairvoyant. As for the people and equipment here belong to me, I think, you don't have any objections, right? It's useless even if you have it, right? Reina said. That's right. Suzanne smiled, turned to Chen Haoran and said, contact Flicker and ask her to come and take these people away and take them to the spaceship to settle down first. Yes, Chen Haoran is now devoted to Suzanne because he can help him become stronger, and he really did it. Can I go now? Lena asked in a low voice. Certainly. Suzanne smiled. He admired Reina's ability very much. If possible, it would be best to take it for his own use. But Reina is a smart woman, and the smarter a person is, the harder it is to conquer her. Although the scientific researchers around him were reluctant, they were very smart. Knowing that Reina did not dare to refuse, they knew how strong Suzanne was. What's more, Suzanne took them away instead of killing them. Obviously, he still wanted them to do research. This is their only value, so they are not too afraid. After looting the entire research room and teleporting away the people and equipment, Suzanne did not go back with him, but flew directly to find Sky and temporarily return to the team. You can leave other trivial matters to Flash and the others. You can take advantage of this time to absorb more energy from ether particles, and by the way, you can also study the crystal that can absorb fear. Just before they landed near the base, Suzanne saw the plane take off slowly, as if it was about to go on a mission. Suzanne stopped and flew to the front of the plane and waved to May in the cab. May was a little surprised. This was the first time she saw Suzanne in this style. She nodded and pointed to the back. Then, the door of the plane slowly opened. Suzanne turned around and flew directly over, then entered the plane. As soon as they entered, they saw Skye, Simmons, Coulson and others coming out. The cabin door slowly closed, and Skye had already rushed towards Suzanne. With the beauty in his arms, Suzanne smiled, hugged Skye and nodded to the others. After a moment, Skye left his arms. "You're back. Are you here to sell fakes?" Coulson walked to Suzanne and asked. "So be it." Suzanne smiled. "Skye, do you mind if I borrow your boyfriend for a while?" "Yeah." Skye nodded. Suzanne followed Coulson to his office. When passing by Simmons, Suzanne smiled and whispered, "I'll go find you later and bring you something good." "Really? What is it?" Simmons asked unexpectedly. "You'll know in a minute." In Coulson's office, after the two sat down, Coulson said with a smile, "I heard that your vacation was very rich and exciting, and you even brought back an alien spaceship. How about taking me to see it sometime? I've always been interested in alien spacecraft." "Of course it's no problem if you want to visit," Suzanne said with a smile. "I heard that director, Tony, was rejected by you. I didn't expect that I have such a big reputation," Coulson said with a smile. "They are them, and you are you," Suzanne said with a smile. "This is really my honor." Coulson smiled happily and asked, "So, this spaceship is related to saving the world you mentioned?" "The space in London seemed to be very unstable some time ago. Eric Chavig, the doctor, specializes in astronomy, but he didn't draw any conclusions, and then the instability in space seemed to disappear. To put it simply, if the person inside this spaceship was not me when it appeared on Earth, then you might not have the chance to sit here so leisurely now," Suzanne said with a smile. Coulson nodded. "I understand. I met Thor this time and stayed in Asgard for a while. It's really beautiful there. You should go and see it if you have the chance." "Hopefully." "What did you mean when you said before that shield is not the shield I imagined?" This question is what Coulson wants to ask and cares about the most. Suzanne said something like this in a confused way when he left. Coulson has been thinking about what it was, but unfortunately he still has no clue. Exclamation mark. "You know that I formed my own team, right?" Suzanne didn't answer, but asked suddenly. Coulson nodded. "It's a war alliance, and it's planning to use the West Coast Island as a base." "Is this your uniform?" "Very cool," Coulson said while looking at Suzanne's clothes. Suzanne smiled and put away the uniform with a thought. Only then did Coulson notice the special ring on Suzanne's hand. Just when he was about to ask, Suzanne said, "Even if I tell you some things, you can't do anything about them. I can only say that you are welcome after they happen. Come to me." "Sounds like it's something that has a big impact." Coulson frowned. Suzanne chuckled and shook his head. "You will know when the time comes. If there is nothing else, I will go out." Coulson wanted to find out more, but he knew Suzanne wouldn't tell. Although Suzanne still belongs to this team in name, it is actually just a cooperative relationship. After coming out of the office, Suzanne went to Skye's place first and chatted with her for a while. Skye missed him and he missed Skye too. After staying with Skye for a while, Suzanne went to the laboratory downstairs. Simmons and Fitz are both here. Seeing Suzanne coming, the two stopped what they were doing to say hello to Suzanne. Simmons even asked directly, "You said you had something for me. What is it?" "What do you think?" Suzanne said with a smile. Simmons thought for a moment and said, "Is it some kind of gift, or is it your blood?" "I never said that someone gave their own blood as a gift, let alone, don't forget our agreement," Suzanne said with a smile. Simmons' face turned red slightly, and asked in a low voice, "So what? What is it?" "I'm not kidding you anymore." Suzanne smiled, put his hand behind his back, then directly extracted a bottle of ordinary supernatural potion from the system space, and handed it to Simmons. Simmons looked at the light blue potion curiously and asked doubtfully, "What is this?" "A superpower potion, similar to the Extremis virus, but far less effective than the Extremis virus. It's just very stable and has no side effects," Suzanne explained. "Really?" Simmons said in surprise. "Although it is not as good as the Extremis virus, the word stability is very important. It is very difficult to achieve stability for any kind of medicine, especially medicines like serum and viruses." "Of course it's true. What we know so far can probably produce one of several kinds of powers." It may be tracking ability, or it may be sound waves, or even mind control, mental control, or predicting the future. My ability is to swallow it comes from a person with superpowers who can predict the future. This bottle of potion is given to you. You can take it yourself or use it for research. However, I hope you can study it because I still have a bottle in my hand that is considered evolved. Potion, but the situation is not stable. Simmons is a very powerful biologist, and her research in this area is very good, so Suzanne hopes that she can study ordinary potions first, and then give R to her after she has a certain understanding. Can she solve this problem? Suzanne doesn't know the effect of R yet, but he knows that it is not stable. The movie says that only Kira can take it without incident, and if other superpowers use it, it will be extremely poisonous. Of course, Suzanne believes it has no effect on me, but now I only have this bottle. It would be great if I could figure out how to prepare it and eliminate this hidden danger. Okay, I will study it as soon as possible. Simmons nodded, and then quickly took out the equipment and looked like he was about to start. Suzanne shook his head with a dumb smile, turned and left. Back in his room, Suzanne fumbled with the ether lamp ring and began to absorb ether particles. With the lamp ring as a container and containment, Suzanne absorbed the energy much faster, and also reduced many disadvantages. He could feel that there was already a small part of the energy breath of ether particles in his body. Maybe it has no use or power yet, but as long as it is completely absorbed and the ether particles become part of one's body, it will be completely different. The most important thing is that if he completely absorbs the ether particles, he can also absorb other infinite gems with confidence. Because they have the same origin, they will not attack each other when they are together. Coupled with the stability of his body, you can definitely integrate all the Infinity Stones into yourself. This is much better than Thanos borrowing the Infinity Gauntlet. Ding! The energy required for upgrade is full, and the system is being upgraded. Suzanne, who was absorbing ether particles, suddenly heard the system prompt, upgraded. I have completed 3 tasks and devoured 3 powers. In addition to absorbing the energy generated by ether particles, the energy generated is almost enough for system upgrades. The most important of them should be the rewards from the mission and the energy of the ether particles. Ether particles are such a powerful thing, so they only absorb a little bit, which can even be said to be negligible, but the energy required to generate the system itself should be quite a lot. He didn't know how long it would take to upgrade, so Suzanne didn't pay much attention and continued to absorb the ether particles. I don't know how long it took, but Suzanne suddenly heard May's voice, and the plane seemed to be preparing to land. I forgot to ask what the mission was this time. Suzanne muttered, stopped absorbing, and walked out of the room. When Suzanne came out and saw that everyone had gathered, he originally wanted to ask casually what the mission was, but after thinking about it, it was unnecessary. He would know it after a while. The group of people got into the off-road vehicle, got out of the plane, and headed to their destination. When they arrived at the place, Suzanne knew what the mission was as soon as he saw the situation. There are tents and a red jeep on 2 sides, and there is a campfire and some camping things in the middle. As I walked over, someone introduced me to the situation. It was said that a group of people were camping here. A man named Adam Cross heard something moving around him and went to check. As a result, he died. There were obvious signs of scorching on the surrounding trees. As they walked and analyzed, they soon saw the corpse. A corpse suspended in midair. Seeing this corpse, everyone was stunned. The situation was so weird. After being stunned for a moment, Simmons was ready to go over and inspect the body, etc. Suzanne suddenly pulled Simmons' arm, and Simmons was stunned for a moment. What's wrong? Save you, Suzanne said lightly, and seeing everyone else looking at him, he said slowly, there is a virus on this thing, and you will be infected as long as you come into contact with it. So, Simmons, if you want to get it checked, it's better to make some preparations. After saying that, Suzanne directly wrapped the body with telekinesis and slowly lowered it. I'll send it to the airplane's laboratory first. With that said, Suzanne controlled the body and turned around to leave. It seems he knows something, Coulson said lightly, and then ordered others to investigate the scene. Back on the plane, Suzanne put the body away, but the protective shield of telepathy was not removed. If I remember correctly, he was infected by a virus on the helmet of the Chitauri, the alien army that invaded during the Battle of New York. The helmet contained a virus, but the antidote can also be found. Suzan, after thinking for a while, he asked the system, "Does that helmet have any use?" "No," the system gave a straightforward answer. Suzan curled his lips. He also guessed that it was of no use. In that case, he was too lazy to intervene. After a while, Coulson and others came back, and just as they were about to ask, Suzan said directly, "This person has been infected by an alien virus. It should be a Chitauri helmet. One of them must have this, and more than one. If a person is poisoned, an antidote can be developed by finding the helmet. That's all I know, and I'll leave the details to you. How about you?" "Me, I have other things to do, just stay on the plane." The helmet was of no use, and since he had provided the information, Suzan was too lazy to intervene. If he had time, he might as well absorb the ether particles as soon as possible, or study fear crystals. Seeing that Suzan had no intention of participating, Coulson couldn't say anything else. After all, the information he provided was already very important. Suzan turned back to the room and continued to swallow ether particles. While Suzan was devouring ether particles, Coulson and others quickly found out the identity of the deceased named Adam through the information provided by Suzan, and then followed the clues to find the alien helmet. It turns out that a fire brigade contracted the virus while wiping the alien helmet. After bringing the helmet back, Simmons and Fitz quickly developed the antidote. It was not smooth at first, but gradually compared and tried, they finally developed the antidote and gave it to those infected by the alien virus in time. People detoxify. The mission was completed and everyone was about to send the helmet away for safekeeping. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief and couldn't help but sigh again at Suzan's ability to predict the future. If not, he already knew. Maybe Simmons would be infected, and those infected with the virus might die from it. The most important thing is, if Suzan hadn't said the detoxification method, even Simmons might have died. Although none of these things happened, Simmons' gratitude to Suzan became even stronger. Upgrade completed. Suzan was devouring etheric particles selflessly when he suddenly heard the sound of the system. "The upgrade is complete. What changes have occurred?" Suzan asked hurriedly. "The dungeon retention time is increased to 7 days, the dungeon task refresh time is shortened to 15 days, and the third dungeon plane is opened." Listening to the system's answer, Su Sheng couldn't help but wave his fist excitedly. "I didn't expect this upgrade to be so powerful. The retention time has changed from 3 days to 7 days, and the refresh time has also been reduced by half. You can enter the dungeon once in 15 days, which is amazing. However, the best thing is still open the third dungeon plane." Suzan became more and more excited as he thought about it. He didn't expect that the third plane would be opened so soon. In this way, you will have more room for maneuver in choosing your own plane. "What are you so happy about?" At the door, Sky suddenly walked over, looked at Suzan who was smiling from ear to ear, and asked curiously. Suzan shook his head and stretched out his hand. Sky grabbed his hand and held it tightly in his arms, sitting down on his lap. "The development has been going very smoothly recently. We have a spaceship, a base, and a few subordinates who are pretty good. We should be able to build a large scale soon. Can I help you with anything?" Of course, Sky is also happy that Suzan is developing so well, so she hopes to be able to help in some way. Suzan thought for a while and said, "Not yet, but I hope you can have a good relationship with the people here. SHIELD won't be able to hold on for long. It would be best if we can win them over by then." Quote, "I understand." Sky nodded and asked curiously, "But, what happened to SHIELD? Do you know about Hydra?" Sky nodded and said, "Of course I know, but didn't you say that Hydra has been destroyed long ago? If you cut off one head, 2 more will grow. If Hydra was so easy to be destroyed, it would no longer be Hydra. They were only destroyed on the surface. In fact, they had already infiltrated SHIELD. Internally, SHIELD is no longer just SHIELD." Suzan said slowly. Sky's eyes widened. This news shocked her. "Don't think too much, you should believe me. Even if something happens, I will still be here." "Well, of course I believe you." Sky nodded vigorously. As night falls, everyone has gone to bed. But the lights were still on in the laboratory. Simmons, wearing a white coat and glasses, was studying supernatural potions on precise instruments. As a biologist, although she is not an expert in genetics and does not have high hopes for superpowers, she is very interested in studying how this potion produces superpowers. Her expression was focused and engaged, and she didn't notice Suzanne walking in at all. Suzanne did not disturb her, but stood quietly and watched. Simmons has a good figure and beautiful facial features. Perhaps because of her personality and professional reasons, she rarely dresses up. Under her loose white coat, her straight legs are exposed, and they are white and unparalleled. Suzanne's mouth corners are slightly raised. Starting from the beginning, he still remembered that he told Simmons that her legs were very beautiful, and asked her to wear less long legs and more skirts or shorts. It seemed that she listened, and she changed them specially. When she was on a mission during the day, she was still wearing denim trousers. Ah! Simmons happened to look up at this time and was startled when he saw Suzanne suddenly appeared, and then said unexpectedly, "Why are you here?" Suzanne walked over with a smile and said, "I brought a gift to someone, but no one seemed to return the gift, so I came here to see if someone had forgotten it." Simmons blushed slightly and said, "If I understand this superpower potion, wouldn't it be the best gift in return?" "That's true, but who knows how long it will take. How about some interest first? For example, how about taking off the white coat outside? Didn't you go out of your way to not wear trousers just for me?" Now they were all blocked by white coats. What a pity. Suzanne said with a smile. Simmons didn't expect Suzanne to notice this, so he hesitated and took off his white coat. Simple t-shirt, denim shorts. She looks youthful, and the most important thing is that her long legs are fully exposed. Gorgeous. Suzanne stared with scorching eyes, which made Simmons a little anxious. "Have you ever heard of a word called leg wan nyen?" Suzanne asked Simmons with a smile. Simmons shook his head in confusion. "I haven't heard of it, what do you mean?" Suzanne pointed to her legs and said, "It means that these legs alone are enough for me to play with for a year." It sounds a bit tacky, but there is absolutely no derogatory meaning. "I just want to say that your legs are indeed beautiful." Really? Simmons didn't believe it. She didn't feel this way herself, and she never heard anyone praise her legs. Of course it's true. It's beautiful and pleasing to the eye. I really hope I can watch it for a lifetime. Suzanne paused and smiled. "If S.H.I.E.L.D. is finished, do you want to join me and follow me? I also have my own experiments. There is a room, but there is no one you can trust to manage it. If you can come, I will leave it to you." How could S.H.I.E.L.D. be finished? Simmons never thought of this possibility at all. Chapter 51. Anything is possible. How about, if it's really over, just follow me? Suzanne looked at Simmons seriously. Simmons was stunned for a moment, then nodded and said, "If that happens one day, maybe. I will agree. Then it's settled." Suzanne smiled with satisfaction and said, "It's getting late, so you should go to bed early. There's no rush to study this super potion anyway." "Well, I'll go take a rest in a minute. Good night then." Suzanne tentatively approached Simmons, and when he saw that she didn't resist, he kissed her on the cheek. "Good night," Simmons said with a blush. After leaving the laboratory, Suzanne returned to his room to rest. In a blink of an eye, 3 days passed. There were no tasks in the past 3 days. Suzanne was basically either swallowing ether particles, studying fear crystals, or accompanying Sky or Simmons, especially Simmons. I have to say that Simmons is indeed very powerful. She is beautiful, has a good figure, and a likable personality. The most important thing is that her professional level is high enough. This is why Suzanne wants her to follow him. In 3 days, she had already made initial progress, and basically understood the formula, efficacy, etc. of the superpower potion. Because the superpowers obtained after taking this superpower potion are very random, she actually started researching this aspect, trying to find out the rules to ensure that she can get the desired ability after taking it. Although she has a preliminary direction and no clue yet, it is enough to prove her talent and ability. After staying comfortably for 3 days, Suzanne was ready to go to the island base to have a look. Although they could rest assured that the matter was left to Huan, after all, it was their own base and they couldn't completely take charge of it. "You want to go out?" Just as Suzanne was about to leave, Coulson ran out from nowhere and asked. Suzanne was speechless. I said, you haven't been staring at me, right? Yes. Coulson nodded and admitted, smiling and said, I was worried that you would suddenly run away. Didn't you promise me that you could take me to visit your spaceship? Now is not a good time. It's a mess over there. If you want, how about I invite you to visit after everything is settled there? Suzanne said. Coulson shrugged. Okay, let's talk about it next time. Okay, just contact me if you need anything. After leaving the plane, Suzanne flew all the way. Under his constant urging, his speed reached the speed of sound. It didn't take long for him to appear above the islands on the west coast. From a high position, you can clearly see the lively scene on the island. Construction is going on everywhere, and teleporters are opening everywhere to facilitate transportation. Suzanne fell slowly. Boss, you're here. Seeing Suzanne falling down, Huan said hurriedly. Seeing the slight sweat on his forehead and temples, Suzanne said with concern, don't work too hard. It's okay, this can speed up the process and also exercise my abilities. Huan wiped his sweat and said nonchalantly. How's the progress? Suzanne knew that even though Huan seemed to be very well behaved and quiet in front of him, he was actually very stubborn, so he stopped trying to persuade him and instead asked about the progress. According to Suzanne's idea, he not only wanted to build a building on the island, but the most important thing was to build it underground. Therefore, the amount of engineering involved is still very large. It's not bad. If everything goes well, it should be completed in half a year. Shuangfeng thought for a while and replied. Half a year, it seems a little slow. But just by flashing the three of them, plus the hired workers, it really couldn't go any faster. It seems that I have to stay and help. Boss, someone seems to be coming. Just as he was thinking about it, Huan suddenly said. Suzanne looked up and saw a light flashing in the distance. Iron Man, why is he here? Suzanne frowned slightly. Isn't this guy still obsessed with the Dark Elf spaceship? Go and ask the Dark Elves whether the spacecraft's technology can be easily cracked. Suzanne whispered to Shuang, who nodded, opened the portal and went directly to find the Dark Elves. At this time, Iron Man had arrived on top of his head and slowly fell down. His posture looked a bit shaky and he looked unskilled. Why are you here? Don't tell me it's for the Dark Elf spaceship. If so, I can only say that your trip will be in vain. Suzanne looked at Iron Man who landed on the ground and curled his lips. The helmet of the steel suit opened, but the person inside was not Tony, but Pepper. Seeing her coming out of the steel suit unskillfully, Suzanne was a little confused. What's happening here? Sorry, I thought it was Tony. Suzanne said in surprise. Pepper smiled awkwardly and waved her hands. It's okay, it's okay. By the way, are you here looking for me? Suzanne asked. Pepper nodded. Yes, I came here specially when I knew you were here. I know Tony has been thinking about your spaceship, but this time I came as a private person. Private identity. Ah, aren't you afraid that Tony will be jealous if you come to me like this? Suzanne joked with a smile, wondering why Pepper came to see him, or is it a private identity? Pepper suddenly said seriously, Mr. Suzanne, I think you may have misunderstood my relationship with Tony. I am her assistant, but I am not her girlfriend. Ah, isn't it? Suzanne was really surprised. Seeing how much Tony cared about Pepper before, he thought they were a couple, but now it seems that they are not. Excuse me, haven't you ever had a single intimate act? Of course not. I'm an assistant, not his girlfriend. Pepper said very seriously. It's just that I've known him for many years, so I can be considered a friend regardless of my assistant status, but it's definitely limited to that. In fact, I have also been looking for a new assistant for her recently, but there is currently no suitable one. Hey, you see why I am telling you this, it is like this, I am here to thank you. Quote. Thank me, because of the extremis virus. Yes. It's not necessary. Didn't I say it before, I was here to get the extremis virus. Suzanne didn't expect that little Pepper would still remember it and come over to thank him. But for me, it's a life-saving grace. So I have to thank you. Pepper insisted, then hesitated for a moment and said, it's just that I don't know how to repay you for your life-saving grace. It's not easy. You just have to commit yourself to it. Suzanne said jokingly. Little Pepper was stunned for a moment, as if he didn't expect Suzanne to say that. Suzanne followed up and said, "Of course, I'm joking. In fact, if you really want to thank me, why not do me a favor? You say, Tony should still have a lot of steel suits, and they can also be controlled remotely. As you can see, I am under construction here. I want to speed up the progress, but I don't have enough manpower, so I'll tell him," Little Pepper said quickly. "Thank you very much. It doesn't matter if he refuses. I'll find another way. Wait for my news." After finishing speaking, Little Pepper put on the steel suit, then heard a bang and took off into the air. Suzanne silently released the energy shield. When the smoke cleared, he couldn't help but muttered, "It seems that whether it is a car or a steel suit, female drivers are very scary." "Boss," the Dark Elf said that the technology on the spaceship is at least 100 years ahead of Earth's technology. Unless the spacecraft is completely dissected, there is no need to worry about the technology being stolen. Flicker came to Suzanne's side and whispered. Suzanne nodded, and Pepper went to Tony for help. If Tony was willing to send out the Steel Legion, the project here would indeed go much faster, but he didn't think Tony would agree, or agree unconditionally. Since the Dark Elf said that the technology of the spaceship was not worried about being stolen, then he could use this as a condition to get benefits back from Tony. For now, let's wait and see the news about Little Pepper. Turning around, Suzanne followed to help. He directly transformed an excavator and began to control it. At the same time, he also released his telekinesis to help transport things. With the addition of Suzanne, the progress has been much faster. After all, Suzanne can use the ether ring to transform into whatever he needs. This improves the efficiency by more than a tiny bit. Unconsciously, it was getting late and the workers had stopped working and were getting ready to rest. Because this is a long-term job, and it is naturally impossible for these artificial workers to live in the spaceship, they have set up a resting place on the island early, and food and drink are all available. After all, they dare to come to work. It's not easy anymore. Alien spaceships, mutants, and superpowers. These are things that ordinary workers dare not come into contact with. Suzanne's name is not that popular and resounding. He is not even well known among ordinary people, far less than Iron Man, Captain America and so on. Therefore, in order to allow them to work here with peace of mind, they have indeed made a lot of preparations. Suzanne had no intention of leaving, so he turned back to his room on the spaceship and prepared to rest. Not long after he came in, he heard a knock on the door, and then Huan came back with a lot of takeout. Chinese food. Did you go out to buy it? Suzanne was a little surprised. Although food was prepared on the island, there was absolutely no Chinese food. Flickering nodded and said, "Yeah, I don't know what you like to eat, boss. Chinese food should be fine, right?" "Of course. Thank you for your hard work." Suzanne took it over with a smile and opened it one by one. "Then boss, please take it easy, I'm going out first," Shuang said, turned around and left. Suzanne wanted to ask her to stay and eat together, but Huan left too fast. Speaking of which, Huan is really hardworking and never complains. It's really good to have such a subordinate. Especially that face. Every time I look at it, I feel like looking at Mr. Fan, sometimes quite impulsively. It can be said that Chinese food is spread all over the world and is very popular everywhere. However, in order to conform to local tastes, it is somewhat spoiled and not so pure. Suzanne simply ate some to fill his stomach, and then prepared to continue devouring ether particles. If he could completely swallow the ether particles, it would be much easier to build a base. This is a reality gem. As long as the power is strong enough, it can change the strength. It is not impossible for a base to appear out of thin air. But now, he can't do it yet. Just as he was about to start absorbing, Suzanne heard a knock on the door, followed by Shuang. "Boss!" Huan shouted and stepped aside. Only then did Suzanne realize that there was another person behind her. Little Pepper. Coming. It doesn't seem to be going well. Seeing the apologetic and angry look on Little Pepper's face, Suzanne had already guessed that it would not be so smooth when she went back to find Tony for help. Twinkle turned and left. Pepper came over and said apologetically, "Sorry, I thought Tony would agree, but I didn't expect him to be so stingy. I had a fight with him. I've had enough of his temper. I'm his assistant, not his mother. Tony's character is really not that likable. It's okay. In fact, I've said it before, you really don't need to thank me specifically. Suzanne didn't take it to heart and said with relief. Pepper shook his head. I have resigned. If you don't mind, I want to stay and help. Oh, it looked like the two had a very heated argument, and Pepper actually resigned. Speaking of which, Pepper's business ability is still very strong. Tony basically doesn't care about anything. The company is managed by Little Pepper, and now that she is here to help, there is no reason for Suzanne to refuse. Of course you want to stay. Although I haven't set up any company, you can see that this is the base for my development. I will definitely need talents from all aspects to help me manage it in the future. It would be best to have your help. Suzanne extended his hand and welcomed him. Let me think about it, but before the base is built, I will stay here to help. Little Pepper said hesitantly. No problem, but as you can see here, it's a bit shabby. I'll arrange a room for you to rest for now. If you need anything, just tell Shuang Shuang. Although she didn't promise to really stay, she believed that as long as we got along with each other for a long time, she could let her stay willingly. Suzanne took her out and arranged a room for her. Night falls quietly. The island is quiet, and the sea breeze blows by, bringing a slight coolness. Suzanne felt slightly uncomfortable. Although he could swallow the ether particles without any hindrance, it lasted too long and his body couldn't bear it. Just like his ability to devour, if he devours too much, his body will be unable to maintain balance and will easily lose control. When it swallows, while swallowing the energy of ether particles, the body will automatically make adjustments to remove the side effects and effects of the swallowed energy on the body. This has a certain frequency. Beyond this frequency, the speed of transformation will decrease. If you cannot keep up with the speed of devouring and destroy the balance, problems will naturally occur. He could now feel something about to stir in his body, which was not so peaceful. He stood up and walked to the door. The door opened automatically. Suzanne came out of the room and walked out of the spaceship. The evening breeze blew on his face, and Suzanne walked on the island. This was his first time to appreciate the night view of the island. It was indeed beautiful, completely different from what he saw during the day. Inexplicably, Suzanne suddenly wanted to drink a few drinks, so his body rose into the air and light streaked across the night sky. When he landed, he had already appeared in the bustling city. Surrounded by lights and entertainment, for many people, nightlife has just begun. Suzanne was walking on the street to find a bar. Along the way, he saw many women with heavy makeup and revealing clothes standing on the street, flirting with the passing men from time to time. Obviously, they are working, but it is a very special job. When Suzanne came over, there were two women trying to strike up a conversation with him, but Suzanne ignored them. I found a nearby bar that looked good and went in. The lights inside were slightly dim and there were not too many people. It was lively without making people feel noisy. I looked around and was about to find a place to sit down, but something happened in the corner of my eye. Suddenly I saw an acquaintance standing in the corner by the window. Suzanne was a little surprised. He didn't expect to see her here, and she obviously didn't expect to meet Suzanne here either. Her expression was very surprised. Suzanne first walked to the bar and ordered a few bottles of beer, then walked over with them. I really didn't expect to meet you here. Suzanne sat down and said casually, "Do you know what I thought of when I saw you?" "Maybe. Tonight will be an unforgettable night," Natasha said jokingly. Yes, this acquaintance is Natasha. Black leather pants, a black t-shirt, and a black leather jacket look cool and charming. Suzanne shook his head. "No, I was thinking that shield was too powerful. I just made a temporary decision and found a bar at random, but you arrived before me. Do you think I'm here specifically to wait for you?" Natasha raised her eyebrows and shook her head. "Then you guessed wrong, I'm not here for you." "Oh." Suzanne opened the beer and handed it over, and asked casually and curiously, "Why is that? Don't tell me that you are really just here to drink." After saying that, Suzanne bumped the wine bottles with Natasha and took a sip. "What about you?" Natasha asked instead of answering. "Me, I just came here to drink," Suzanne said casually. "Did you see the people at the table on the left? Pay attention to the bag on the chair," Natasha suddenly whispered. Suzanne glanced casually to the left. There were 3 young people drinking there, 2 men and 1 woman. There was a travel bag on the chair. There was something like a stick coming out of the zipper. It was too long, so it couldn't be completely removed. Put it in your travel bag. It seems that you are here not just for drinking. Suzanne turned his head and said to Natasha, will me being here delay your mission? How about, should I find another bar? Natasha rolled her eyes at him angrily and said, you've already come, and you still want to leave. Do you know what the stick in that bag is? That stick is very special, and it seems to contain a kind of anger that makes people violent. Magic. This group has killed several innocent people. My mission is to get the stick and figure out its origin. This shouldn't be difficult for you, right? Suzanne said noncommittally. With your help, wouldn't I be more confident? Don't forget, after all, you are also a consultant of S.H.I.E.L.D. now. Although this title has no practical meaning, you can't just sit back and watch, right? Natasha asked with raised eyebrows. I won't do anything that's not beneficial. Suzanne shook his head. I'm just here for a drink. How about you do me this favor and let's find a quiet place to have a drink after this? Natasha looked at him and asked with pleading eyes. Although he knew that Natasha didn't need his help at all, Suzanne still couldn't refuse her like this. Especially if Ruo was referring to something, he knew clearly that it couldn't be anything else but just drinking, but people couldn't help but think about it. What are you going to do? Suzanne asked in a low voice. Natasha smiled brightly. You agreed. This is not the right place to take action. Just wait for them to leave later and find a place to take action. The main target is the stick. No, Suzanne responded lazily, and then drank the wine leisurely. Although it was just a glance, Suzanne already recognized what the stick was. I originally thought that they would have to follow Coulson to meet them, but I didn't expect that Natasha had already paid attention first. It's a coincidence that I just went out for a ride and had a drink when I encountered this kind of thing. It seems that this thing is destined to belong to me. As for helping Natasha, it's just a piece of cake. Now that they have met, he will take action even if Natasha doesn't say anything. However, this thing will definitely not be given to her, or to S.H.I.E.L.D. How's your base doing? Natasha asked casually while drinking. It's not that easy to start something from scratch. I'm wondering whether I should find more helpers to help. It might be faster. If you talk to Nick Fury, he'll be happy to help. The problem is I don't want to. Let Nick Fury help. Forget it, it would be weird if he didn't do anything in the base, not to mention, it's not that easy to get him to help. They're out. The two of them were drinking and chatting. They were handsome men and beautiful women. No one would doubt their identities. At this time, Natasha whispered something, and the three people at the table far away had already picked up their bags and stood up to leave. Let's go too. Suzanne stood up as he spoke. Natasha smiled sweetly and stood up, then took Suzanne's arm and leaned almost half of her body against him. Very fragrant and soft, also very flexible. She knew that Natasha didn't mean it, but she couldn't help it. Who made her bust stand out so much and hug her so tightly that it was hard to even feel it. Don't think too much. Natasha seemed to know what Suzanne was thinking, so she whispered something, and walked out of the bar with her arm on his face. Outside the bar, the two men and one woman who came out had already walked to a car next to them and seemed ready to drive away. Are you driving? Suzanne asked in a low voice. No, what about you? Natasha shook her head and asked nonsense. Obviously, Suzanne didn't drive either. I saw two men and one woman getting into the car and driving away. Suzanne took Natasha's arm and walked directly to a remote alley nearby. Although Natasha was curious, she didn't ask. She knew that Suzanne must have some plans. Hold me. Coming to the alley, Suzanne whispered. Natasha simply hugged Suzanne's waist and pressed her whole body against him. Then what? Natasha asked. Suzanne smiled. Then, I want to help you pretend to be bee and help you fly. As soon as he finished speaking, a ball of energy appeared around him, enveloping him and Natasha. When Natasha was curious, he jumped into the air and chased directly in the direction of the car. What's this? Natasha found that she was not affected at all. She neither felt strong airflow nor any discomfort. If the scenery below was not constantly retreating and changing, Natasha would have thought she was not flying. What kind of ability do you have? This energy feels so special. Natasha was a little curious. Could it be that Suzanne had swallowed up some special ability? However, he didn't hear anything about Suzanne's recent actions, except leaving the Earth. This is green light energy. Suzanne shook the etheric light ring on his finger. It's this ring. It's called the Green Lantern Ring. It can be transformed into various forms through human willpower or imagination. Green Lantern Ring. Did you get this outside the Earth? Well, that's right, Suzanne responded, looking down at the car as it slowly drove to the parking lot of a small hotel, and then entered the hotel. After the two of them landed, Suzanne removed his energy, looked at the inn and said to Natasha, "What are you going to do next? Are you going to go in directly, or will we talk about it later when we have a chance?" "Just go in." Originally, Natasha was ready to take action directly, but now that there was Suzanne, she was more confident. The two walked into the small hotel arm in arm and quickly found the room where the two men and one woman were. Standing at the door, Suzanne couldn't help but said softly, "You are quite good at playing. Can we share a room with 3 people? Natasha rolled her eyes at him and whispered, "I realize that you are really a bit wretched." "Men, it's normal. If you are serious, it would be hypocritical, wouldn't it?" Suzanne said disapprovingly. Natasha snorted and knocked on the door with her hand. Boom, boom, boom. There was a knock on the door, and a man's impatient voice came from inside. "Who is it?" Natasha said nothing and continued to knock on the door. Footsteps were heard, followed by the door opening. A man opened the door and looked at Suzanne and Natasha with a bad tone. "Who are you?" Natasha smiled brightly, suddenly grabbed the man's wrist, and then pushed him hard with her knees. In an instant, the man slowly fell to the ground with a painful expression, and Suzanne couldn't help but grin. Just looking at it made him feel pain. This guy was so unlucky that he probably wouldn't be able to use it anymore. Natasha and Suzanne entered, and the two people in the room also realized that something was wrong. The man instantly took out the stick from his backpack. The moment he held the stick, he could feel his temperament change instantly. Especially ferocious and angry. With a roar, he rushed towards Natasha and hit her directly with the stick. Natasha bent down, holding one hand on the ground, raised her left leg and kicked his wrist. He grunted in pain, and the stick fell to the ground instantly. Natasha caught the stick easily. "Depend on." Suzanne couldn't help but cursed in a low voice. He didn't expect Natasha's movements to be so crisp, nor did he expect that the man was so weak. He was clearly holding a stick, but Natasha snatched it away with just one move. With the stick in hand, Natasha suddenly roared hysterically, and her eyes became extremely violent. He waved his hand and hit the person's shoulder with the stick. Then he turned around and hit the person's chin with a leg, instantly kicking her into the air. Before she could use up all her strength, Natasha was facing her. Kicked him in the stomach. Plop! The man was kicked to the wall in an instant. The wall shook for a moment, and then he lay down softly. Natasha turned her head and looked at the woman. The woman seemed frightened and hurriedly ran when she saw Natasha rushing toward her. Natasha snorted and prepared to catch up, but suddenly stopped. "Take him and leave quickly," Suzanne shouted to the woman. The woman was stunned for a moment, but finally turned around and helped the man who was knocked down, and then ran out in a hurry. As for the one who was put down before, although the woman also wanted to take him away, she was powerless. It was Suzanne who released his telekinesis and pulled him out directly. Boom! Suzanne closed the door and looked at Natasha, who was struggling ferociously. Let me. Natasha gritted her teeth and shouted. "You are controlled by anger, let it go," Suzanne said with a sigh. He knew the power of this stick, and it could definitely leave side effects on people. "I said, let me go." Natasha couldn't listen to Suzanne's words at all, so she shouted loudly, shook off his mind control, and then hit Suzanne with a stick. Suzanne didn't move, but an energy shield suddenly appeared in front of him to block the stick. The shield instantly turned into a hand and grabbed Natasha's wrist. HMPH. Natasha groaned and couldn't help but let go of the stick. Gululu. The stick fell to the ground and rolled aside, and Natasha fell limply to the ground. Suzanne looked at the stick on the ground. It was obvious that this stick was not a whole, but seemed to be a part of it. The lines on it were very special, and it looked like it should be the bottom part. Natasha didn't know what it was, but Suzanne knew it very well. "This thing is the cane of an Asgardian berserker. As long as you hold it, you will transform into a berserker and your strength will be greatly improved. One berserker is equivalent to 10 ordinary warriors. Of course, they are all Asgardians. Naturally, this war cane cannot be compared to Thor's hammer, but it is also an Asgardian weapon, and its power is much stronger than the weapons on Earth. Especially, it should contain dark magic, which can not only make people fall into anger. In a violent state, it can also trigger and deepen inner fear. Even Asgardians cannot guarantee perfect control, otherwise, they would not have been split up and hidden in the first place. Staring at the crazy palm, Suzanne had a faint impulse and wanted to give it a try. Bending down and slowly reaching out his hand, Suzanne took a deep breath and suddenly grabbed it. At that moment, there seemed to be a special power pouring into his body, making him unable to help but become angry and manic, as if he wanted to destroy everything he saw. He knew that this was the magic on the cane. He controlled the restlessness and slowly calmed himself down. Strength. Very powerful. He could feel powerful power flowing through his body, which was at least 2 or 3 times stronger than before. However, he didn't feel the fear, and there was nothing unusual except for the restlessness of anger. Is it because my body can still resist the magical power? Or is it because the spiritual barrier of the lamp ring prevents the magical invasion of the cane? Suzanne was a little surprised, but he didn't think much about it. No matter what the reason was, it was always a good thing. It can improve your strength without worrying about side effects. This is good stuff. Suzanne smoothly received it into the system space, and then looked at Natasha. Natasha seemed to have fainted while lying on the ground. Suzanne picked her up and put her on the bed. He looked at her, who had obviously fainted, but had a fearful expression on her face. He didn't know what she saw. It must be those bad memories from the past, right? Regarding the memory of the Red Room, it should be a past that Natasha will never forget in her life. There, she received hellish training that allowed her to become the Black Widow. This side effect may not disappear in a short time unless she overcomes her fear. This woman is really brave. Suzanne couldn't help but shake his head. Even though Natasha usually seemed very strong, she looked heartbroken and pitiful now. Bang bang bang. Someone knocked on the door, and then the door was pushed open, and the owner of the small hotel walked in. You don't have to worry about anything. We're staying in this room temporarily. I can guarantee that you won't be in trouble. The money is yours. There was quite a commotion just now. It's normal for the boss to come over to check on the situation. Before he could speak, Suzanne spoke in an unquestionable tone, and then threw out a large amount of money. The owner of the hotel was also very sensible. He took the money, turned around and left, and closed the door without saying a word. Watching him close the door, Suzanne was about to turn his head to look at Natasha, but suddenly felt his hand being grabbed. Are you awake? Suzanne turned his head and Natasha had already opened her eyes. Are you okay? How do you feel? Natasha shook her head and said nothing. She looked at Suzanne with those scared eyes and felt uncomfortable. Don't worry, you were affected by the cane and you will be fine soon. No matter what you think or see, it has happened before, so there is no need to be afraid. I will get you a bottle water, just drink some water and calm down. After saying that, Suzanne stood up and was about to get her a bottle of water. Who knew that as soon as he stood up, he was grabbed by Natasha, and the strength was not small. Suzanne, she didn't expect that Natasha would suddenly exert force, and she fell down directly on top of Natasha. Ouch! Suzanne snorted and hurriedly wanted to get up, but Natasha held on to him. Every time he went up and down, not only did he act rudely again, but he also made the two people's mouths touch each other just right. The smell of blood spread instantly. Suzanne felt some pain at the corner of his mouth. When he lowered his head, he saw that the corner of Natasha's mouth seemed to be broken. Let me go first, don't be afraid, I won't leave. Knowing that Natasha was dragging him because of fear, Suzanne said softly and got ready. But Natasha shook her head. Instead of letting go of Suzanne, she pulled him tighter. She even hugged Suzanne's neck crazily and pressed directly against him. The smell of blood entered his mouth. Suzanne didn't dare to use too much force for fear of hurting Natasha, but Natasha seemed to be crazy at this time. Maybe the blood stimulated her reason and made her very violent, which made Suzanne even more nervous. Some can't stand it anymore. Just kiss, there is blood here, this is too harsh. Natasha's emotions seemed to be a little out of control. Well, Suzanne admitted that his emotions were gradually out of control. Although the Berserker's cane did not trigger his fear, the manic mood did not completely disappear. It was just calmed and suppressed. Under Natasha's almost crazy initiative, the restlessness seemed to be regained. It was like igniting, especially the faint smell of blood, which stimulated Suzanne's emotions. Make him feel crazy, make him want to be hysterical. I don't know who started it first. The clothes are rolling and fading away in the madness. Reason has long been forgotten, and I have to admit that crazy Natasha is really a good rhythm player. Aha, accompanied by a groan of pain, I finally forgot everything. I don't know how long it has been. Time seemed completely meaningless at this time. After being exhausted, the two hugged each other and fell into a deep sleep. Early the next morning, Suzanne was awakened by the noisy sound of the street outside. He opened his hazy sleepy eyes and saw the dazzling sunlight shining through the window, flickering as the curtain swung. Squinting his eyes slightly and gradually getting used to it, Suzanne realized that he was lying next to him alone. Very white and soft. Turning his head, Suzanne saw Natasha sleeping soundly. Memories gradually emerged. Looking at Natasha, who was sleeping and thinking, it was difficult to connect her with the crazy appearance last night. Fear is indeed terrible. Natasha, who is so strong, can't help but lose control of her emotions. Looking at the blood stains still remaining on the corner of Natasha's mouth, Suzanne shook his head gently and prepared to go down, but he was shocked to find that there was a touch of bright red on the bed sheets. Suzanne was stunned for a moment. No way, Suzanne muttered. He didn't expect Natasha, who was so crazy last night, to be in perfect condition. Does this count as making a lot of money for yourself? Thinking about the madness last night and looking at his peaceful face now, Suzanne really didn't know what to say other than making a lot of money. Does this push the widowed sister away? No, this should be regarded as being pushed by the widowed sister, right? Shaking his head, Suzanne gently took Natasha's hand away from his body, then stood up and walked quietly to the bathroom. By the time he finished his shower and came out dressed, Natasha was already awake and looking out the window with her head tilted, as if she was feeling the warmth of the sun. You're awake, are you going to eat something, or should you continue to rest? Suzanne came over and asked. Where's the stuff? Natasha turned around and asked. Suzanne was speechless. Is this the first thing you asked when you woke up? Otherwise, should I ask you how you felt yesterday? Well, I admit that yesterday's feeling was a bit complicated for me. I don't know how to comment, but at least, I am sure it was very unforgettable. Natasha said slowly. She was indeed out of control emotionally yesterday, but that didn't mean she didn't know or remember anything. Natasha was not annoyed about this accident. It could be said that it was not that difficult to accept it. Maybe he had such a premonition from the first time he met Suzanne. That's pretty much it. After hearing what Natasha said, Suzanne nodded with satisfaction. His attitude at the beginning did make him a little depressed. Should he be so understated? When you wake up, ask directly about the mission. He is obviously a novice, but he pretends to be experienced and nonchalant. This made Suzanne quite unhappy. You don't have to worry about things. Your main task today is to have a good rest. Whether it's physically or mentally, you need to rest now. Suzanne came to Natasha's side and said softly. Natasha hesitated. This was her mission after all. However, when she saw Suzanne's concerned eyes and expression that were a little domineering, she couldn't help but nod in agreement. What are you thinking about? Seeing Natasha suddenly calm down obediently, Suzanne asked curiously. Natasha flipped her hair, shook her head slightly, and said with a soft smile, It's nothing, I suddenly felt that this is the feeling of someone caring. It's great. You will get used to it in the future, because I will always be by your side. Suzanne chuckled. I didn't expect that what I said last night would come true. It was truly an unforgettable night. It seems that I also have the ability to predict the future. Natasha couldn't help laughing when she thought of her teasing to Suzanne yesterday. Suzanne also laughed. The laughter was silent, but very sweet. What about Sky? Natasha suddenly tilted her head and asked Suzanne with interest. What do you think? Suzanne didn't answer, and he didn't seem nervous. He asked with a smile. There really isn't anything good about a man. Natasha shook her head and pouted. Sky is my girlfriend, I like her. As for you, you are my woman now, I like you very much, and I am also very fascinated by you. It is impossible for me to give up any of them, so the easiest way is of course I want both. Anyway, nowadays, rich and powerful people basically have more than one woman, right? I can still be considered rich and powerful if I can do it, right? As long as my relationship with you is right and true, isn't that okay? Suzanne smiled and said, of course, you can refuse, but I am a Chinese, and a traditional Chinese, so whether you want it or not, you must be mine, woman. Tradition. Do you think you are being carefree? In ancient China, the emperor, that is, the king, had 3 wives and 4 concubines and a harem. So, this is really a tradition. Suzanne said seriously. Natasha also knew this, but she didn't expect that Suzanne would use this as a reason. Emperor, king, is this your goal? Natasha was suddenly curious and asked, what if I find another man? I will kill whoever you are looking for. Suzanne said very calmly, but Natasha had no doubt about the firmness in his tone. This was definitely not a joke. All right, you win. Natasha shrugged her shoulders. I'm not planning to find a man anyway, you are enough. However, my current situation is not that bad, so you should tell me what's going on, right? The Berserker's cane is an Asgardian thing. It can induce people's fear, anger, and increase their strength. This is only 1/3 of the cane. I'm going to find the other 2 parts. And stay by yourself? Natasha asked. Suzanne smiled. Yes, because I may be the only one who is not affected. I think Nick Fury regrets asking me to complete this mission. Now that Suzanne said this, Natasha knew that this Berserker cane was beyond the reach of S.H.I.E.L.D., but she didn't care too much. Although she belonged to S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers, it was obvious that now Suzanne have a closer relationship with her. What's more, once everything is in Suzanne's hands, it might not be that easy to get it back. Natasha was very curious, where did Suzanne put his cane? He remembered that he did not leave yesterday, and she did not see the cane. Suzanne smiled and said, if he has any objections, you can ask him to come to me. As for now, you'd better rest honestly. Okay. Natasha's physical fitness is still good. This is the first time she has been crazy all night, and now she only feels a slight pain. However, she liked Suzanne's concern very much. Seeing Natasha obediently, Suzanne smiled happily. This cane is only part of it, right? Do you know where the remaining part is? Are you really not affected? Natasha leaned on Suzanne and shook her body slightly. Now that she thinks about it, that kind of fear, the feeling still made her uncomfortable. Feeling Natasha's emotional changes, Suzanne gently patted her shoulder and said softly, the cane is divided into 3 sections. I also know the locations of the other 2 sections. I will look for you when you feel better. As for the impact, it is still a little bit. When I hold the cane, the anger in my heart will be stronger, but the impact is not big. That's good. Natasha breathed a sigh of relief. She knew how strong the influence was and how painful it was, and she didn't want Suzanne to be like her. The 2 stayed in the room until the afternoon, and Natasha left after she felt better. When leaving, the owner of the small hotel looked at Suzanne with a strange look in his eyes. It was obvious that the unscrupulous and crazy owner last night also heard it. After leaving the hotel, the 2 found a place to eat something. Are you going back to S.H.I.E.L.D., or are you coming with me? After eating, Suzanne asked Natasha, are you going to find the rest of the cane? Yes, since you already have part of it, let's find the rest so that others don't get it and cause trouble. What happens next? Natasha asked again. Suzanne thought for a while and said, I should build a base later. My first priority now is to build the base. Then I won't go with you. I'll go back to S.H.I.E.L.D. Okay, don't go on missions during this period and have a good rest. After the 2 kissed goodbye, Suzanne set out to find the remaining parts of the cane. It may be difficult for others to find the remaining 2 parts. After all, the cane has been hidden on the earth for a long time, and it was only discovered now that it has so many secrets. But for Suzanne, it really wasn't that difficult. He knew the hiding place. Although the 2 places were far away, Suzanne flew all the way and found the 2 canes in less than half a day. He took out the 3 canes and placed them on the ground. The canes connected with each other and generated attraction. The combination comes together. The shape is similar to Loki's scepter, but it is relatively simple and not as gorgeous. Holding the cane in both hands, anger suddenly arose, and the power became stronger. There was a faint feeling of surging out, wanting to vent and destroy everything. Suzan slowly controlled his emotions and started to wave. It doesn't seem to go very smoothly. Suzan frowned slightly. He was not very used to using long weapons such as canes and guns. On the contrary, when the cane was separated, it became easier for him to hold the two parts. Retracting the Berserker's cane to the system space, he clenched his fists with both hands, and two black tang knives soon appeared. Body swaying, hands waving. Suzan nodded with satisfaction. Sure enough, the two-handed knife was much easier to use. However, whether it is a pair of swords transformed from ether particles or a pair of swords transformed from a lamp ring, although they are very powerful, they have no amplifying effect. Considering the increased power brought by the Berserker's cane, it's a pity to give up like this. It seems that we still have to find him. Suzan muttered. Originally he had no intention of finding the owner of the Berserker's staff, an Asgardian hiding on the earth. This Asgardian was not only a member of the Berserkers, but also a blacksmith. The blacksmith of Asgard. Suzan's purpose in finding him was to hope that he could change the Berserker's cane into a pair of swords, which would be more convenient and powerful. Suzan remembered that he seemed to be a professor at a university in Seville. An Asgardian who loves life on Earth. By the time Suzan arrived at Severe, night had fallen quietly. He only knew that this Asgardian was called Elliot Randolph and that he was a professor at the university, but he didn't know where he lived. At this time, it was obvious that he couldn't be in school. However, it is not difficult to find out his address. Suzan called Sky and gave him Elliot Randolph's information. Soon, Sky had found his address. Elliot Randolph was a wealthy man. After all, after living on Earth for so many years, although he is usually very low-key, he knows how to enjoy life. The luxurious villa looks like it's worth a lot of money. At this time, waves of high-pitched female voices came from the master bedroom of the villa. Standing at the door, Suzan was really depressed. You really know how to enjoy life. Suzan shook his head and knocked gently on the door. There was a sudden knock on the door, startling the two people in the room. The woman stopped and asked the fat middle-aged man doubtfully, "Is there anyone else in your family?" Elliot Randolph shook his head. "Maybe, there are guests. My dear, let me go out and take a look." After speaking, Elliot Randolph put on his clothes and opened the door warily. "Who are you?" Looking at the young man at the bedroom door, Elliot Randolph frowned slightly. "This seems to be my home, and I didn't invite you." "This is indeed your home, but it is also the Earth, so, you are an uninvited outsider just like me, aren't you?" Suzan said with a smile. Elliot Randolph's expression he changed instantly, shook his head and said, "I don't know what you are talking about. Please leave my house now, otherwise, I will call the police." "Are you sure you want to call the police?" Suzan chuckled, and the Berserker cane suddenly appeared in his hand. "What's this?" Elliot Randolph looked at Suzan with a puzzled expression, as if he didn't recognize him. Suzan smiled softly. "Professor Elliot Randolph, now that I'm here and have taken out this thing, wouldn't it be a bit hypocritical for you to keep pretending?" Elliot Randolph hesitated for a moment, frowned and asked, "Who are you?" "My name is Suzan. I think we can talk, right?" "Good." Elliot Randolph responded calmly. His previous surprise and doubts disappeared, and he turned and entered the bedroom. After a while, a woman came out of the bedroom. She looked a little unhappy, glanced at Suzan, and then left the villa. "Sorry for disturbing your good business." After the woman left, Suzan shrugged apologetically towards Elliot Randolph. Elliot Randolph stared at Suzan with some surprise. Were you not affected?" He noticed that Suzan had been holding the Berserker cane. He knew the power of the cane better than anyone else. Seeing that Suzan did not go crazy, he couldn't help but be a little curious. Even he, an Asgardian, could not help but influenced. "If it had any impact, I think I wouldn't come to you," Suzan said with a smile. Elliot Randolph nodded and asked, "So, you know my identity?" "I'm curious, how did you know?" "I have been to Asgard and dealt with the Dark Elves. If you are well informed, you should know that the Dark Elves' spaceship now belongs to me," Suzan said lightly. Elliot Randolph's eyes widened in surprise and disbelief. This is impossible. The Dark Elves are extremely powerful. They have been lurking and trying to come back. Unless they all die in battle, otherwise, you can't get their spaceship. That's about it. I killed Molesky. Now there is only one Dark Elf left, and he has surrendered to me. I need to calm down. Elliot Randolph turned around and walked to the wine cabinet and poured 2 glasses of wine. He handed one to Suzanne and drank the other in one gulp. After a while, he slowly said, "It seems that my information is indeed not well informed. You, who are you? It is absolutely impossible for ordinary Earthlings to defeat the Dark Elves." "For me, nothing is impossible." Suzanne chuckled and controlled the ether particles to float around him. Under the surprised gaze of Elliot Randolph, he finally transformed into a battle suit and attached it to his body. This is an ether particle. All the ether particles were obtained by Suzanne, and Elliot Randolph finally believed that the Dark Elves had been destroyed by him. "Since you have ether particles, the Berserker's cane should be of no use to you." "I don't understand. Why did you come to me?" Elliot Randolph asked in a low voice. "If I remember correctly, you were a blacksmith before, right? I want you to help me transform the Berserker's cane and forge it into a pair of swords." As Suzanne finished his words, he had already transformed into a pair of swords. "Looks like." Elliot Randolph was surprised. How did he know his identity and that he was a blacksmith? He had always hidden his identity. Even Asgard didn't know of his existence and thought he had been killed. "As long as you are willing to help me, I will help you keep your secret and hide your identity. You must know that I am very familiar with Asgard," Suzanne said with a smile as he narrowed his eyes. But that smile was clearly threatening to Elliot Randolph. "I really want to help you, but I can't." Elliot Randolph sighed. "There are not enough materials. If you want a single sword, maybe you can, but a double sword is definitely not enough." "Isn't it enough?" Suzanne frowned slightly, and suddenly with a thought in his mind, he took out something from the system space. "What about this? Is this enough?" Elliot Randolph looked down. "Is this Asgard's armor? Where did you get it?" "I told you, I'm very familiar with Asgard," Suzanne said with a smile and asked, "Can the materials for this armor be used?" "It's possible. Asgard's weapons and armor are basically made of the same material. It should be enough to forge them into double swords. But if they are forged into double swords, I'm afraid the magic inside will change," Elliot Randolph said with a frown. "What changes?" "What Suzanne values is that it can increase anger and strength. If this effect is lost, it is not as good as the double swords transformed from ether particles. If it is changed to double swords, the magic will be divided into 2, and the effect will naturally be weakened to a certain extent. In fact, the principle of this magic is very simple. It makes people fear and generate anger, so, unless you can find something similar otherwise, the effect may not be as good as the original one," Elliot Randolph explained. "Fear, anger." Suzanne walked to the sofa, put the Berserker's cane aside, then drank from the wine glass, bowing his head in thought. Elliot Randolph said nothing or interrupted. "Actually, I have something that should meet your requirements, but this thing is very dangerous, even if you are an Asgardian." Suzanne drank the wine in one gulp and said slowly, "I have a crystal that can absorb the power of fear. If it is accidentally infected, it will become an apostle of fear." "What is it? Take it out and see." Elliot Randolph had never heard of anything similar and was a little curious. At the same time, he also had strong confidence in himself. After all, he is an Asgardian. Suzanne took out the fear crystal, a small, orange crystal. "It doesn't look like anything special." However, Elliot Randolph suddenly raised his eyebrows and said cautiously, "How strange, I can feel the power contained in this crystal. It makes me feel scared. I am sure that it can kill me." "Good stuff. What a good thing. I suddenly had an idea." Elliot Randolph was a little excited and said excitedly, "Don't you want 2 knives? I can fuse this crystal into one of the knives to absorb fear. The other knife can leave a complete magic, through the absorbed fear, increases anger and strength. One absorbs and the other releases. This is quite interesting." Suzanne raised the corners of his mouth and said with a smile, "That's right. One absorption and one release will not only not affect the effect of magic, but the 2 will complement each other and double their power," Elliot Randolph said excitedly. As a blacksmith, although he doesn't like his profession, he is still very excited to be able to forge such a weapon. You sure? At least 70% sure. Elliot Randolph said firmly. Okay, I'll leave these things to you. How long will it take to heal? It's hard to say. I need to prepare. Elliot Randolph was not sure of this. After all, he had not been a blacksmith for many years. I'll leave the stuff here with you, and you'll let me know when it's ready. Of course, I think. I don't have to worry about you taking the opportunity to run away, right? Suzanne asked with a smile. Elliot Randolph said with a wry smile. Even if I want to run, I have nowhere to run. That's hard work. Suzanne patted Elliot Randolph on the shoulder and said, I know you don't want to go back to Asgard and prefer life on Earth. As long as you help me build a pair of swords, I can guarantee that even Asgard, even if the Germans find you, I won't let them take you away. Of course, it's not just the Asgardians. Thanks. Of course, Elliot Randolph firmly believed in the guarantee given by a strong man who could kill Molesky, destroy the Dark Elves, and even ether particles. For so many years, he has lived a low-key and happy life, but he has always been worried and full of worries. Now, he can finally breathe a sigh of relief. Therefore, Elliot Randolph now not only does not blame Suzanne for suddenly coming to him and asking him to build weapons, but he is very happy and grateful. Suzanne left his number with Elliot Randolph and then left his house. He believed that Elliot Randolph would help him build a good weapon as soon as possible. One absorbs and one releases. Suzanne was really looking forward to what kind of power the double swords would have after they were built. Originally, he planned to absorb the fear crystal, but if it was more useful on the dual swords, that would be great. Anyway, the power of fear absorbed is ultimately under your control, so use it. I really made a lot of money from this sudden drinking trip. Not only has she earned a Natasha, but she will also soon have super powerful weapons. He is in a good mood now. While soaring slowly in the sky, enjoying the beauty of the night sky, I was thinking about my next plan. He is not worried about the big plan, and the layout is very simple. He wants to make his name as much as possible and expand his influence and power. But personally, he has some ideas. Calculate his abilities. Extremis virus, fire control ability, flame ability, future prediction, tracking, telekinesis, mental control, sound waves. It can be said that there are many abilities. This is internal. What about external? Ether particles. Green light ring. Box of ice. There is also a gravity particle. Whether it's internal abilities or external things, they are all extremely strong now. However, this is just the surface. Many abilities are useless and of little use. His attack methods are mainly fire ability and telekinesis. As for the external equipment, the only ones that can be used now are ether particles and light rings, which are also called ether light rings. The ice box cannot be used for the time being, at least not in the Marvel world, otherwise Odin must know that he took it away. For the time being, he does not want to be an enemy of Odin or Asgard. Gravity particles have no reaction, not to mention that even if there is a reaction, it is nothing more than an ability. The dual knives of fear should be good, but they are not available yet. So strictly speaking, his fighting ability is not strong, and his fighting skills are even more lacking. If you encounter someone who is weaker than yourself, you can naturally easily solve it with your ability. But if you encounter someone who is stronger than yourself, you will be at a disadvantage. Moreover, these abilities can be developed in depth. He now has a new dungeon plane that has not yet been determined. He can also erase a dungeon plane and choose a new one. In the latter case, he must choose a 600th world with a similar timeline and the same background. Make good use of these two copies. Suzanne was thinking about the choice of dungeon when he suddenly felt something rushing towards him in the distance. As soon as he turned around to look, he felt a strong wind rushing towards him, knocking him to the ground in an instant. Got out. Someone attacked me. Suzanne was hit and his blood boiled, but he was not injured. After all, he was protected by the energy of the light ring, but it was so sudden that he didn't expect it. After a moment, he stabilized his body and flew back quickly. Tornado. It turned out to be a tornado. Suzanne was a little stunned when he looked at the tornado that was rapidly selecting not far away, but then he felt relieved. Because he saw a person in the tornado, to be precise, just the upper body of a person. His lower body merged with the tornado. It was obvious, this tornado was caused by him. It's interesting. Suzanne thought of a person, the mutant tornado, who could release and control tornadoes. He was a villain who often dealt with Spider-Man and Ant-Man. He was a rather troublesome guy. But, how did this guy find me? Isn't he a loner? Later, it seems that he followed the Red Skull. How could he sneak attack him for no reason? But it doesn't matter. Since he dared to sneak attack on him, he would have to pay the price. As for the reason, it's not too late to ask later. Suzanne was not that good-tempered. He was attacked by someone for no reason, and then he had to ask the reason slowly. With a sound of bang, a sound barrier seemed to appear under his feet. Immediately after, Suzanne came to the front of the tornado, waved his hand, and a huge palm appeared out of thin air and grabbed it directly towards the tornado. The wind was strong and the speed of the tornado was very fast. Looking at the huge palm that suddenly appeared, the whirlwind under his feet accelerated instantly and flew away. After Kankan dodged, several flames appeared in front of him. He quickly accelerated the wind in an attempt to extinguish the flames. However, instead of extinguishing the flames, they caught the wind and intensified. The tornado was startled, but he was smart and knew that his wind could not extinguish the flames, so he used his skill to blow the flames away. Slightly relieved, Tornado was about to continue his attack when he suddenly saw a huge fist appearing in front of him. Ah! With a scream, the tornado was knocked to the ground and flew out. Come back to me, Suzanne sneered, and his huge fist instantly extended, turned into a rope, and chased the tornado. Tornado was a little stunned, his head was dizzy, the cyclone in his lower body disappeared, and the whole person fell from the air. Suddenly, the dark green rope wrapped around Tornado's body and pulled him over instantly. With this entanglement and tug, the tornado gradually woke up, and its lower body turned into a whirlwind again and tried to break free. However, this is a rope made of the energy of the etheric lamp ring. How can it be broken away so easily? The huge force caused the tornado to fly towards Suzanne. He clearly saw that he was getting closer and closer to a fist filled with flames. No! Listen to me first, Tornado shouted, trying to make Suzanne stop. Suzanne smiled coldly and suddenly punched. Boom! The fist was accompanied by flames and hit Tornado's face directly. You can clearly see that Tornado's face was dented by the punch, and then the whole person was hit and flew out. The blood turned into a red rainbow in the air. Suzanne used his left hand to manipulate the rope to pull him back, and then punched with ease. Boom! Boom! The tornado was like a sandbag, being knocked away and then pulled back. At first, he tried to resist and struggle, but after a few punches, he immediately withered. What does it mean to have a face full of peach blossoms? That's it. Pulling him back again, the rope turned into a huge hand, holding him in the middle, and suspended him in front of Suzanne. Seeing the dying and embarrassed tornado, Suzanne said slowly, "You seem to have something to say just now. What you wanted to say can be said now. What nonsense are you talking about now?" Tornado couldn't help roaring in his heart. The beating is over, is there any need to talk now? Don't you have anything to say? Then don't say it forever. Suzanne raised the corners of his mouth, and the ether particles gradually condensed and turned into the head of a gun, sharp and depressing, and slowly stretched towards the tornado's head. Wait, I have something to say. Tornado was suddenly startled and shouted hurriedly. Magneto asked me to come. The gun tip stopped at Tornado's forehead, and he could feel that there seemed to be black and red particles moving rapidly. He could feel that as long as he moved a little, this thing would pierce his head cleanly. He swallowed subconsciously and said timidly, "Magneto asked me to come." Magneto, Suzanne muttered, and his eyes suddenly changed, turning extremely dark in an instant. This change surprised Tornado, and then he felt confused. Are you from the Mutant Brotherhood? Why did Magneto ask you to come? Yes, I just joined the Mutant Brotherhood. Magneto said that you killed Pyro John, so let me kill you. If I succeed, let me become a core member of the Mutant Brotherhood. If I fail, then say Magneto wants to see you, Tornado whispered. What a cunning old man. This tornado is just cannon fodder. He definitely doesn't know his own strength, so he foolishly comes to deal with him. If he succeeds, Magneto will be able to avenge his men, gain both loyalty and a good reputation. If that fails, asking yourself to meet may be an attempt to win over yourself. Tornado doesn't know, but Magneto definitely knows about his devouring ability. If Tornado fails, will he let go of his ability? Obviously it won't, so this tornado is just cannon fodder. But John is dead. It swallowed up his ability and he was injured, but it didn't kill him because of Sky. Did he commit suicide? Or, Suzanne thought of a possibility. Magneto is not a soft-hearted person, he is absolutely cruel. In his philosophy, there is only usefulness or uselessness, but there is no emotion. Now that John has lost his powers, Magneto will never care about him. If Magneto killed John and blamed it on himself, he could make a big deal out of it. The more he thought about it, the more Suzanne felt it was possible. Squinting his eyes slightly, Suzanne used his precognition ability to try to sense the future. Unfortunately, this ability did not work. What's wrong with me? What did you do to me? Tornado suddenly woke up and shouted towards Suzanne in horror. Mutants are indeed stronger than superpowers who obtain superpowers through potions. They woke up so quickly. Suzanne said secretly, then looked at the tornado and said, "Thank you." "Thank you. You said thank you to me." Tornado was stunned, not understanding why Suzanne suddenly thanked him. Why did you say thank you to me?" "Because of your ability. Before, I was thinking about how to develop my ability and make it stronger. I didn't expect that you would bring your ability to me. I accepted your ability. Anyway, dead people don't need abilities, isn't it?" Suzanne smiled and stretched out his hand towards him. "What are you talking about? What kind of abilities are delivered to your door? What do you want to do?" "No. Don't." Tornado yelled in horror but couldn't stop him at all. Suzanne put his hand on his body and instantly began to devour his abilities. The tornado struggled again, and finally calmed down. The energy of the etheric lamp ring suddenly disappeared, and the tornado fell instantly. Suzanne waved his hand towards him, and the flames shot out. He heard a boom, and the flames hit the tornado. The tornado exploded instantly like a firework, with sparks dotted, falling and scattering, and finally extinguished and disappeared, and the tornado has also been reduced to ashes, not even a scrap is left. Is this the ability of wind? It can not only control wind, but also create wind. Yes, it's really good. If it is combined with the ability of fire, it can greatly increase the power of fire. Ignoring the dissipated tornado, Suzanne quietly sensed the ability to create wind. Great. Better than expected. I don't know what Tornado is thinking. I guess he can't fly, so he can only move his lower body at high speed to create a tornado. Although the effect is good, the shape is too awkward. Suzanne tried to shake his arms slightly, and soon all the surrounding wind was gathered, forming a small tornado. Then, Suzanne slowly turned into flames, and the red flames gradually merged with the white whirlwind. With a thought, Suzanne increased the temperature. Almost in an instant, the flames had reached the temperature of a supernova. The temperature this time seems to be higher than last time. Suzanne felt the change in temperature on his arm, and clearly felt that not only was the temperature rising very quickly, reaching the temperature of a supernova almost instantly, but the temperature itself was also higher than the last time he dealt with the dark elf Molesky. Higher. This wind's ability is really good. Suzanne nodded with satisfaction, then looked around. Surrounded by the dark night sky and the bustling city below, no one else was seen. It seems that Tornado is the only one here, so it won't be long before Magneto knows that Tornado is dead, and he will naturally take action. Whoosh! There was a sound of breaking through the sky, and Suzanne instantly disappeared into the night sky. Returning to the West Coast Island base, Suzanne entered the spacecraft and returned to his room. After taking a shower, Suzanne lay down and began to swallow ether particles. This has become a required course for him every day. His body can swallow any ability or energy without causing side effects, but for example, his body is a container or water tank, and ability energy is water. If there is too much water, problems will naturally arise if it exceeds the capacity of the container. Therefore, he cannot devour it without any scruples. Whether it is quantity or quality, there are certain restrictions in this regard. However, after this period of continuous devouring, Suzanne could feel that the capacity of his container or water tank had increased. He believed that given time, he would be able to devour even the most powerful abilities and energies. Therefore, it can be said that Suzan is devouring ether particles not only for the ether particles, but also to exercise his swallowing ability. 2 hours later, Suzan felt a little saturated for the time being, so he stopped to rest. A dreamless night. In his sleep, Suzan vaguely seemed to hear a voice. He squinted and opened his eyes. What he saw was a colorful figure with perfect curves. Suzan suddenly became energetic when he saw it. As a man, my reaction is stronger in the morning, but now that I see such a visually impactful scene, it becomes even stronger. Huan turned around and was stunned for a moment when he looked at Suzan, who was staring straight at him. The corners of his eyes subconsciously caught a glimpse of a towering place on the quilt. His face turned slightly red, but the corners of his mouth subconsciously raised. I thought you didn't like me. Huan said proudly in his heart, and then said with a smile, Boss, you're awake, breakfast has been prepared for you. Suddenly I feel so happy. When I opened my eyes in the morning, I not only saw delicious food, but also beautiful women. Suzan said with a smile and sat up. Twinkle chuckled. Boss, among the women around you, I am not considered a beauty. Who said that? You also know that I am Chinese. Although the ocean horse is indeed good and very charming, but similarly, the Oriental style is more in line with my aesthetics. After all, I have been used to it since I was a child. Yes, Suzan said with a smile. Huan Shuang pursed her lips and smiled. I'm going to go out to work first. Well, go ahead, I'll be down in a minute. After Huan left, Suzan had breakfast, washed up, and then followed him down. Little Pepper was wearing a helmet and supervising the work on the construction site. She seemed to be doing a decent job. Suzan went over to say hello to her, chatted for a while and asked her if she was used to it, and then joined in. After working hard all morning, Suzan was about to take a break when he suddenly heard the phone ring. When he took it out, Sky was slightly surprised. Honey, do you miss me? After answering the phone, Suzan asked with a smile. Of course, can you come back? Sky said. Now, if you're not in a hurry, how about later? I'm right here at the base. When work stops in the evening, I'll go back to find you. How about we find a place to eat? Suzan said softly. I'm afraid not. Well, we have a mission and it's a bit tricky, so Coulson asked me to inform you. Sky explained helplessly. It turns out you have a mission. I thought you really missed me. Suzan said, pretending to be angry. Sky hurriedly explained. Of course I really miss you, but I know you are very busy now, so I am afraid of disturbing you. Okay, I'm teasing you, idiot. Okay, I'll go over right now. Suzan said with a smile, hung up the phone and told Shuang that he was leaving, then took off into the air. Well, the surrounding workers are already used to it. Arriving on the shield plane, Suzan saw Sky waiting for him early. He smiled and stretched out his hand, and Sky jumped directly into his arms. After kissing her on the face, Suzan hugged her and went to the conference room. In the conference room, Coulson, May, Simmons, and Fitz were all there. Besides them, there was one other person. Michael. It was the centipede warrior injected with the centipede virus that he and Sky dealt with when they first became SHIELD consultants. At that time, he was almost out of control and almost hurt Sky. He knocked him out and handed him over to SHIELD. As for what happened next, he didn't interfere. This Michael will also be a character with a name in the future. A half-human, half-machine death warrior. Of course, he is not a death warrior yet. He is just a newbie super soldier who has stabilized the centipede virus and is targeting Captain America. Remember me? Suzan first nodded towards the others, then asked Michael with a smile. Michael smiled heartily and nodded. Of course I remember. If you hadn't knocked me out, I might have lost control. You saved my life and my life. Also, I'm sorry, at that time I lost control and almost hurt Sky. Don't be sorry, you should be glad that it was just a close call. Suzan said with a smile. If Michael had really hurt Sky at that time, Suzan would have killed him directly regardless of whether he would become a death warrior in the future. Okay, let me talk about this mission. The situation is not so optimistic. Coulson clapped his hands, attracted attention, and talked about this mission. Before Suzan arrived, The others already knew the detailed goals of the mission, and even called Michael over to let him participate. The only one who was not clear about it was Suzanne. Of course, this is what they thought. In fact, although Suzanne didn't know some of the details of this mission, he knew more about others than Coulson and the others. Coulson told Suzanne in detail about the information and clues of the mission. 3 people, to be precise, 3 centipede warriors broke into the federal prison and rescued one person within 2 minutes. A former general named Edison Wave is a strategic expert. The first task this time is to find Bo and the centipede warriors. Suzanne was really interested now. He had destroyed one of the centipede warriors' bases, and because of his own fault, they didn't get Chen Haoran or his platelets to stabilize the centipede virus. Now it seems that they have found another way. Can you find where he is? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.